man and not to sit like a lady.
Well, how do
I'm
men
not supposed
sit?
to
They
like
lounge?
this.
Men lounge?
I'm not supposed to sit like this. I'm not supposed to sit with my legs together. I'm supposed to sit like a cowboy.
You're in the right state for that, Brenda.
No.
If you were really gonna sit like a cowboy, you would turn that chair around.
Yes.
Good point. Yes.
Not that chair.
So when you see me sitting here like this, it's not because I'm no longer a lady.
Okay.
It's because my physical therapist said,
Whatever excuse you would like us to use, Brenda.
Okay, let's, I would like to call the study session to order, please. You can talk after the meeting, and I think the first thing we'll do is say the Pledge of Allegiance. And after which, Kevin Kilty would like to say a few words about the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Don?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now, Dr. Kilty would like to say a few words in reference.
Well, actually, I had intended to write a letter to Carol as board correspondence about the Pledge of Allegiance, but I really don't like the Pledge of Allegiance, and I don't know how we have come to say it at the beginning of board meetings because I don't think we've taken any vote on this. And I just want to say that many people don't know the origin of the Pledge of Allegiance, nor its history, but it's a very divisive pledge. My view is that we take an oath of office where we pledge to uphold the laws, and the Pledge of Allegiance, to me, smacks of an ongoing loyalty oath said twice a month or once a month or whatever it is. But the Pledge of Allegiance originally began in the 1890s, and it was the brainchild of a fellow by the name of Bellamy. I can't remember his first name, but he was a Christian Baptist socialist, which I think is the oddest combination of things I've ever heard, and his cousin, also named Bellamy, who was a utopian socialist, and they decided that the United States needed a good dose of nationalism, and this Pledge of Allegiance would help along those lines. And I'd challenge anybody to tell me when nationalism has been a force for the good or positive. But it has, in the meantime, offended an enormous number of religious people, right up to the 1950s, I think, when the term "under God" was added to the Pledge of Allegiance, at which point it also then offended atheists. And it has been in the courts, I don't know how many times, and of course various court rulings that you are really not required to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance in schools. And it's of some interest that Wyoming is among 5 states that does not allot time to say the Pledge of Allegiance in the beginning of the school day. So I just want to say that this thing came as a bit of a surprise to me. I know there was a discussion about it, and I asked the question, exactly what good will this do us? And I arrive again at a board meeting to find that we are saying the Pledge of Allegiance. So I just wanted to speak about that some. I am among the people who find the Pledge of Allegiance somewhat divisive.
Madam Chair,
Thank you, Kevin. Yes?
may I make a motion that we say a Pledge of Allegiance before our meetings, and then I'd like to speak to it?
this is Madam Chair, this is a study session, so we can't take.
We can't take a vote.
Okay,
But we can take a vote at our
then I'll hold my comments until then.
business meeting. Okay, so we'll move on
All right?
with that thought in mind. The second thing, which really isn't on the agenda, and I'm deviating, is I would like to congratulate Erin Curtis on her reporting award that I saw in the paper.
Yay!
Yay, Erin. Good job. Yes, please speak to that.
It was the Rockies were a little while ago, and so one of the categories is long-form education reporting. And that particular article that I had submitted was an analysis of the results from a survey that students in the local school district had done talking about bullying incidents as they were implementing the Old Days program in the district.
Well, congratulations.
Very good job. Thank you.
Nice.
Okay, now we will move on into developmental education. Dr. Schaefer.
Madam Chair, members of the board, or can we be informal? Are we informal during study sessions or formal?
I
Formally
think,
informal or
yes,
informally
please,
formal?
yes. Either one.
Okay.
I think we've been a little more informal, and I like that we can learn in study sessions in a little bit less formal way.
Great, well, thank you. And thank you for the interest and opportunity to have at least a starting conversation about developmental education here tonight. And what I thought I would do to start off, and I may run to the podium when I get to starting some slides, but just wanted to start off the conversation with some developmental conversation about developmental education to make sure everybody knows sort of what we're talking about. You'll hear two terms used frequently when in this regard. One is remediation, one is developmental education. Remediation essentially refers to remediating somebody by filling in the gaps, the skills, the knowledge that they lack for the stage of life, of education, of what have you, of where they're at. And so we're talking about remediating them to be ready for what it is we expect them to be ready for. The term developmental education, I think, has arisen more and more in one because it's seen as more the politically correct moniker for what we're doing with these students. But the other reason is because we're recognizing more and more that we're not simply filling in content gaps. And so developmental education as a term really suggests that we are taking a more holistic approach to developing students to be ready for something. So it looks at both content gaps, but also at times looks at those non-cognitive maturity levels, interpersonal skills, communication abilities, those types of things that we also have to develop to get students to a certain level. Our level and what we're talking about is college readiness. And so when we talk about remediation in higher education or developmental education, what we're talking about is helping students fill gaps to become college ready, and we expect them that they should be college ready. But it's interesting as we talk more and more about college readiness, and we're talking about developmental students or remedial students. We're talking about students who we are saying are not college ready. There are two questions that are getting more and more focus, heat, debate centered around them. One is, what exactly does it mean to be college ready? And then the other one is, how do we assess whether or not somebody is college ready to do that? And so there is considerable discourse and finally some emerging research on those two questions alone. I cannot say that there's agreement on either of them. And more importantly, the questions that are now rising is the people that are defining what does it mean to be college ready, or how do we assess or designing the assessments. The question is are they doing it correctly, or does it even matter? So it's a pretty big conversation that is continuing to grow and to grow and to grow. Here's the issue and really what's driving this from a national perspective over and over and over again as we look at accountability and all those good things. Developmental education and what's happening with students that require developmental education suggests essentially that we have to educate a student twice for the same content. So if they're graduating from high school and they get to college and we have to teach them high school level coursework, education, what have you, it's suggesting that they have to be taught twice for that, and people are asking why. The other question that stems naturally from that is at what cost? I don't know the exact numbers, but there's been studies now that suggest that we're talking about millions of dollars that students and taxpayers pay essentially to teach a student, again, what we expect them to already have. And so the fiscal picture in the conversation is really starting to hit. And then the one that I think is driving, at least from an educator's perspective, driving a lot of this is the fact that developmental students just don't succeed. Students that are placed in developmental coursework in colleges rarely succeed. So I'm going to hop up to the podium real quick, and I got a few slides, and then I know Ann's here is going to help me with these. So I thought what we'd do is start and show you just some of the evidence that's out there right now, the data pertaining to developmental education at the state or at the national level, at the state level, and then here in Wyoming. These data are from Complete College America. If you remember during my update at your last meeting, I hit on sort of where we're at with Complete College America. Wyoming is the 32nd state to join the initiative. That initiative is focused on getting more students or a larger percent of the population in the U.S. with a college credential. So one of the things that Complete College America is tracking and really starting to develop some policy momentum behind is regarding developmental education. So the data that I have here come from Complete College America, and they're fairly consistent with all other measures that we've reviewed regarding remediation. So here's what we know. Almost 52% of the students who enter two-year college enrolled in remediation. And if you look at it from the age range, it's surprising that higher percentages, perhaps in this case not statistically significant, but higher percentages of remediation or students enrolling in developmental coursework, remedial coursework, are our younger students, our more traditional ones. So the ones that you would think, because when you talk to people, everybody says, well, naturally, if you've been out of college or out of school for 10 years and you come back to college, you're going to have to brush up on skills. What we're finding is that's not necessarily the case. In fact, the more of the students that come in right out of high school are the ones being placed and enrolling in remedial education. And we've done some analysis here at the college that sort of support that as well, that it's our younger students are the ones that are enrolling in developmental education or placing in it at a higher rate than our adult students. So it gives you a breakdown, but just over half of the students that come to a community college enrolled in remediation, just about 20% at a four-year university enrolled in remediation. So putting it into perspective, so for every 100 remedial students, every 100 students that come in and enroll in a remedial class, 62% will complete their remedial sequence. 62%. Of those 62, only 22 of those students will actually complete the college level coursework after 2 years, and fewer than 10 will graduate in 3 years. And this is what's driving that statement that I said and that other people are saying, that once you're placed into a developmental education track, the likelihood of you actually succeeding towards graduation is pretty slim. The numbers here in Wyoming are very consistent and very similar. And again, these come from Complete College America. We actually are just now submitting updated data for these same measures, so we should have some updated data. But again, it's just under half of all the students entering a Wyoming community college enrolled in remediation. Here you see a slight shift in the percentages, but still it's hovering around that 50%. In the case of the 20 to 24-year-olds, it gets up to 58%. But about half of the students that come to us enroll in remediation. For every 100 students that enroll in remediation here in Wyoming, only 46 will complete that sequence of developmental or remedial coursework. 31 will then complete the associated college level coursework, and less than 22 will graduate in 3 years. So fewer of them are actually completing the remedial course. But then slightly higher than the national average are actually going on to complete the college level course, and then slightly higher for completing their degree or graduating within 3 years. So that's the national and the state perspective. But now Anne's been doing some great work on our key indicators, key performance indicators, and I asked her to come and just share with you specifically what's happening here at LCCC in regards to developmental education and walking through our key performance indicators that focus on this area. So.
Good evening, everybody. Wanted to first remind you about our set of key indicators. It's been a while since we presented them to you. So we have key indicators in two categories: the performance indicators, which are kind of the outcome ones. We also have efficiency indicators, which we're not going to get into it all tonight, but they do make this set of 39 things we're going to be looking at. And we are using them to both measure effectiveness in achieving our mission. We're going to use them to set priorities. If you're on the team that's working on strategic planning, you'll get a much more detailed look at all 39 of them next week. But today, just wanted to, in the performance indicators, we have, they're divided up into 5 categories, and the developmental ones are under the academic preparation category. This was a separate handout attached to your agenda, just kind of an overview of what the indicators are. So getting into the key performance indicators, what we call the KPIs, we're looking at, there are two that are related to developmental education. One is the success in the developmental coursework. We're measuring that by, in a specific fall semester, anybody enrolled in the class, in a developmental class, split out for reading, math, or writing, how many actually successfully completed that semester. That's the what we're calling KPI 10. And then KPI 11 looks at what happens after that first fall semester. So we actually track them through 8 semesters. That's 3 years it's the third summer after they originally got into this tracking group on there. And then we split it out after 1 year, 5 semesters, and 8 semesters, partly because that's the way we report it to the state. So it's 1 year is specifically in statute, but then the 5 semesters and the 8 semesters through the summers just made more sense to us. So, and again, we look at how many actually enrolled in a college level class or related college level class, and then what happened when they did enroll. On those, we can only track the writing students and the math students. We have reading students, developmental reading students, but there's not a clear path to track them. Where in math, there's 1 or 2 places they're going to go where we can track them. In writing, there's 1 place to go, and that's by far the easiest one to track through. Okay. Yes, Ed.
Is it okay if we ask?
Sure, yes, please.
We're getting descriptive data.
Yes.
What I'm wondering is, how do we take this descriptive data and then pursue the question, why? Diagnose why this is happening. What's our next step there?
I think I'm going to defer that a little bit to after we get the data. That's part of the reason we're looking at these indicators, is so we can get a descriptive look at where we're at, and and some statistical. I've done some statistical analysis to say when we have what I would say is a real difference, a statistical difference, and mostly we're just starting to look at trends and things. So we do have a team of staff and faculty and administrators. I have a team of 6 people. I will have to email Vicki and Joe to forward you their names, because if I try right now, I know I will miss some, and I don't want to do that. But they're starting to look at this first picture of the data and say, that's not where we want to be, with all the statistical information. And then really making recommendations on where they think the college should start focusing its efforts. And those recommendations are going to go to College Council, some to the strategic planning team next week as we start developing that. And then it's part of those groups to say, okay, the data says these are the places we need to work most on, and then come up with strategies how to do that.
The reason I'm getting at this is, we're looking at ways to change remediation. And if we don't know why, it's kind of like at this point we figured out that there are problems, but we don't know what's causing those problems. So I'm concerned that we're trying to come up with solutions without understanding the cause.
I'd say, and Joe, please dive in if I'm off track, that that would be one of my first recommendations on here. Is like, we know we have difficulty here. Let's do some more detailed research into why. And we can also look at the best practices in the literature that's out there. If there's proven literature or strategies that have been working there, I don't know that we necessarily need to replicate all of the research here. We could just say, this one makes sense for us, let's go for it. Am I on the right track, Joe?
Yeah, that's fair. Ed, in some cases, I think we do know the why, and you'll hear from, I don't want to put the faculty on the spot right now, but you'll hear from some of the faculty tonight who are getting a pretty clear picture in some cases of what's happening there, and they are working on developing their interventions or approaches based on that. In other cases, I think the entire nation is speculating, and I don't know that anybody has really been able to chart the water. So one of the things that you'll see, I'm not going to try to take your thunder here, Ann, but you'll see we actually get a larger number of students through developmental education that never then enroll in the college level course. I mean, they actually make it through and never enroll in the college level course. And we speculate that it takes too much time, life happens, it intervenes, whatever it is. But we're not quite sure why. Is it advising? Is it the curriculum? Is it that they get fed up? Is it like, I mean, what are those things? So there are some cases I think that people are still trying to figure out exactly why. The intention here is to start to paint the picture of what. And once we know what, it should focus our interventions and our exploration to develop solutions, and where those solutions can be backed by the emerging high impact practices, we want to do that. But it's to start to really focus our attention on what the problem is, and then start to look at what are the things that we can do to truly address that. And as you'll hear, especially from the English faculty, they're taking this seriously and taking a hard look, and they're developing some pretty good understanding or ideas of what's going on there. And so again, I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. I'll stop there.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Anne, I don't think we've heard to this point, what areas of the college do we do developmental education? Math and English, I know. Is there anything else?
Reading. Reading is, it's got an English prefix, but those are the three that we do. We do actually have a below college level biology course and a computer applications course. Very, very small enrollment, and less than 50 a year. And those are actually declining on there. And no, they're not a part of any kind of national tracking or system or any kind of reporting that we have to do. So those are not in this conversation right now.
As far as reading goes, there's no college level reading course, so you can't track students off
No.
into that. So math, the first college level course would be 1,000.
Math
And
1,000 or 1,400, depending on the path they're on.
But Math 1,000 would satisfy when you talk about
Yes.
enrolling in a college level. And for English, it's what?
English 1010.
Okay.
Okay. And if there are other questions now, I'll get through those slides. I spoke to this one a little bit about, I have a team that's helping me look at them, and we have a very sophisticated system of rating things right now. We're using smiley faces and frowny faces. It's basically a 3-point system, and just to say, first looking at the data, and once we've been doing this for several years, we're going to get more sophisticated at it. But as a first impression, looking at the trends we're seeing and the comparators that we have, do we think we're in good shape? This is really something to brag about. Those are the smiley faces. The stuff that we're really sure we're not where we're at, those are the frowny faces. The I don't know face in the middle is really the team is not quite sure about the context. The trend looks okay, but they felt like they maybe need some more information, or maybe had concerns, but it wasn't a huge concern right now. So they get the middle rating on that. Both of the two indicators we're going to look at tonight are frowny faces on there, which kind of fits with the national discussion. Okay, so when eventually we do a first report on all of our indicators to the college community in the fall, it's probably not going to be as detailed as this, but for purposes of our conversation, I went ahead and included quite a bit of detail here. The first thing you see is the purple line at the top is the success rate for all credit classes, including our developmental classes on there. And our success rate, let me remind you, the denominator is the total duplicated enrollment of all the students officially enrolled. So if you're officially counted on our enrollment report, it's however many classes that you were in added up for all of our students. So that denominator is in the 30,000 range. The numerator for all of these lines is the number of passing grades out of those officially enrolled students. So it's the A's, the B's, the C's, or in the case of our developmental English and writing courses, they're the S, the satisfactory. Mm-hmm. So it's the same, that's a national definition we use for the National Community College Benchmark Project, which is the bigger one of our note rectangles. It's the note rectangle on the left is NCCBP. That's the benchmark project data. We also report the same way to the Wyoming Community College Commission. We've had to report the overall rate the last few years as in our funding formula. So that's one reason this one pops out as an important thing for us. Okay, so, now looking at the data, the bottommost line is the developmental reading class. So over the past 5-6 years in this, it's gone from about 55% to 46 on there. One thing you need to know about the reading is that's the smallest group, and where this one is the one that's fluctuating most wildly, that's because it's got the smallest denominator. If you've got 30 students and it changes by 2, it's going to be a lot more than if you're in math or writing, where if you have 1,000 students and the top changes by 2, you're hardly going to see it. Okay. I was kind of happy to see that for the most part the math is on the top, so giving my my background in mathematics on there. And the writing has been in there. And on the writing and the math, we're really right in the ballpark with the rest of the state on these. On math, we are well above average. We're in the 81st to 85th percentile when we look at the national data on there. The reading and writing, has surprised me. It turned out on the bottom on all of those. I'm not sure why that is, but I also wanted to point out that from 2010-11 to 2011-12, all 3 of these areas implemented changes to try to improve student success. And most of the areas you see a slight swing up. It's not enough data to say whether it was a statistical difference or not, but these areas had recognized these things and working on it. Okay. So any questions on this indicator? Okay. Then we start looking at that indicator 11, which actually has 2 parts for 2 different areas. So I have 4 slides to show you here. It was really too confusing to try to consolidate this anymore on there. The first one we're looking at is, of those students who are in the original developmental course, how many went on to enroll in a related college level math class? Again, that's Math 1000 or 1400 within 1 year through the next fall. That's the bottom blue line. Within 5 semesters, that's through the second summer, the red line in the middle, or within 8 semesters, that's the green line on the top. So these stack up, right? The 8 semesters is always going to be on top of the 5, is always going to be on top of the 1 year on there. So you'll see that just taking the fall 2009 cohort, which we need to go back that far to be able to track it through 3 summers after they start on there. Taking the fall 2009 cohort, this is saying that out of 100 students who started developmental class in fall 2009, 38 of them had enrolled in a college level math class within 1 year. And bumping all the way up, we have 47 of them enroll within that 8 semester period on the top green line. So that's saying, success was kind of okay in the ballpark, but as we start looking at this, and we don't have national comparison data for this enrollment piece, so we only have our history to look at that, but we're losing a bunch of people in the transition from first enrolling in developmental and getting into a college level math class. And then this is what happens once they get into that college level math class. And this one we do have some comparison data on. The 3 shorter lines on the top are our Wyoming comparators. Okay. And again, they're the lowest of the 3 on the top. So the purple one with the X's, that's the 1 year. So we need to compare the purple one kind of in the middle with the blue one at the top to see what's happening at LCCC versus the 1 year. That's a statistically significant difference on there. Of those who succeed in their college level math class at LCCC, we're only 30%. So of those 43 who actually enrolled within 1 year, only 30 of them passed. So we lost a third, okay, on there. And you'll see as the lines go up in time, we see the same pattern. We're consistently, significantly below Wyoming on this one. on there, and we're seeing positive trends, but we're far below where the team thought they should be, so that's why this one got the frowny face. Okay, that's the math picture. Yes, Ed?
Does the data take into consideration where the students were at the cohort? Do you know within that context of that cohort how they performed as a whole, what their, I'll say, average would be relative to the state cohort average?
Let me see if I'm understanding you right. You're saying, like, I started off in the developmental cohort and you didn't. And so after a year, my overall GPA is 1.8 and yours is 2.5, that kind of comparison?
No, I was thinking within the cohort. They tested, they need the remedial coursework. Where were they at?
Oh, okay. So what level did they start at? That's not into consideration. It's just that they started in some developmental in there, and this is where they went. But you're asking your question reminded me of something I forgot to tell you about. In the math, because of the state reporting requirements and the way we have to do it for the benchmark project, back on slide 10, the math cohort includes people we serve at UW. We have no way of tracking them into UW's college level classes now. So this is kind of artificially deflated. And there's kind of two ways around that. One is to try to change statute and national reporting requirements, which I don't think we're gonna have much success at, but that to enable us to exclude the UW students. That's kind of a philosophical issue though too, because while they're enrolled in the UW math classes, they are our students. The better thing and what I'm recommending, and we're already kind of work on, is to see if we can work with UW's Office of Institutional Analysis to track them. I think that could help us a lot in there. So once we work that out, I would hope to see this success rate and enrollment rates go way up. But for now, this is what we have.
Madam Chair. This table, which one is it that shows LCCC's? Okay, so we're looking at table, they're
On
not numbered here, that's
the slide 11B
it's
at the top.
11B, 11B once again. And we see that our trend is heading upward slightly for success in a college level course after having gone through the developmental sequence. But how do we know that these are LCCC's own internal courses? How do we know that that measurement has been consistent over that time period and that we aren't seeing a greater success rate simply because the courses have gotten a little easier, or we've changed the material that we're looking at, or we've dropped more difficult material and de-emphasized it at the end and so forth?
I don't, honestly. That would be a research project we could look into. We'd have to involve faculty to see if the curriculum has changed.
Well, one thing that would be of interest is, what year did we stop doing common tests and common finals in these courses? I'm not sure when the common final stopped in Math 1400. It's been 3 or 4 years, so I can research that for you. In other words, this trend upwards sort of corresponds to getting rid of the common course finals. And didn't we do those in Math 1000 too?
There were common projects in Math 1000, but never a common final that everyone had to take, to my knowledge.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the right conversation, and that's essentially where the conversation is at now. I know the English department has been having it. We've started that within the math department. The issue there is the lack of continuity of measures of, if you will, of the content and of the curriculum. And it's one of the reasons that I've been advocating for common learning outcomes across all sections of the same course, and common assessments for those learning outcomes. And whether that's a final exam that we use or a different type of assessment, so that we can actually track and ensure the continuity of the curriculum between variables such as distance versus face-to-face, different faculty members, what have you. And right now we don't have that capability to do it. And I'd be lying if I said that I could guarantee that all sections of Math 1000 or 1400 were actually teaching the exact same content or to the same level of outcomes. That's the work that's ahead of us, so that we won't have to ask those questions. We can say we know the curriculum is consistent, and we can track the actual changes to the curriculum.
anything else on this slide or on the math cohort? Okay. And I just have 2 more slides to show you. This is that developmental writing cohort. We started off in a developmental writing class, which does have 2 levels, so that is not taken into consideration. They may have started at the lowest level and had to take another one before they could get to college. But of those who start off in developmental writing, this is the one that shows, did they go on within a year, 5 semesters, 8 semesters, actually enroll in the college level writing. And you'll see we're doing a little bit better here, at least from the data that we have currently available. We have about, of that 100 who start, about 63 actually get into the English 1010 at, within 1 year, 71 get into it within 8 semesters. This one's really important because if you're degree seeking in math, you have a couple of options. You have the Math 100, 1000, Math 1400. If you're seeking a degree, you have to pass English 1010. This is the only course in the whole curriculum that every degree seeking student must take at the moment. So this one is we're doing better, but if these are degree seeking students, we still have 30% who haven't even gotten there in 3 years. That's a frowny face. Because that means they're never going to, the reasoning of the team, why we assigned it this, is we're doing better, we're showing progress, but this would be a big barrier to graduation to those degree seeking, those developmental students who started off on there. So that's the enrollment in English 1010. And then, this one's kind of scattery, really busy looking, but that's partly because we are more in the ballpark of the state here. So you have the trend lines crossing each other. So it looks harder to read than the math one, but it actually means it's better, if that makes sense. For example, if you look at the bottom blue line and the purple line, that's where over that 1 year time period, our developmental students who enrolled in that English 1010, they passed it. And we're right in that same range with the state on this one. And we see that with the same lines too. The red and the light blue are the 5, and the green and the orange are the 8 semesters on there. So when we look at just the state, we almost gave this one a straight line face because it's like, okay, not so bad. But then we remembered how well we're doing overall in credit classes, which is between 70, 73% the last 5 years, and we're like, wait, we're still at least 10%. We're still significantly below that on there. And that's why this one was still done as the frowny face. We really need to look at these things in the opinion of the team who's helping me look at this data. Okay. That's the end of my part of the slide. So any questions on the English piece? Or I can turn it over back to Joe, or back to Joe. Okay.
Are there questions for Ann?
Yeah, I want to come back. I don't want to pick on this too much, but the same thing would be true across the board for both English and math. We don't know amongst those cohorts how they're really scoring. In other words, when we look at what our students are doing here that come in as a group, we don't know if you looked at that whole, if they're scoring significantly lower than the group that's coming in at CWC or some other school, or for the state as a whole. We don't know whether we're below the statewide with them coming in. And I ask that because if we're getting our group significantly lower, that would help us understand a little bit why we're consistently lower.
If I'm understanding your comment, yes, that we don't have any reporting that looks at where they place developmentally. Part of the difficulty in the state is we have different developmental sequences. There's not a developmental sequence that all 7 colleges have. When we get to the college level, though, it's the same courses that we're looking at. But how many courses they have to take from when they come in to when they're able to enroll in that first college level class is not in this conversation on there. And we actually, when we were looking at developing our key indicators over the course of the last 2.5 years now. That was actually part of the conversation, but one of the goals of the whole developing these indicators was to be able to look at both our trends and outside comparators. And if we start looking at where they place developmentally and how they go to do, we're only gonna have our internal comparison, which is very valuable, but it was kind of missing part of the point of this project. So there's certainly things we can try to dig into later, and I know that how we place, as Joe mentioned earlier, how students are placed into college or developmental, how they're labeled as college ready or not, that's a big national conversation, and I know it's going on at the state in different areas right now as well.
And one last thing, when a lot of that reading that we find out there in terms of looking at the cutoff scores, for lack of a better word, I'll use that, people are, just barely below that. Do we have any data that address the issue of what that range on either side of that standard, the impact it has in terms of these numbers?
Not really. We have some data in our system. We haven't done the research to really analyze the exact score and what that has to, with success. We haven't had the time or the resources, capacity is the word I'm searching for. We haven't had the research capacity to do that kind of digging in yet.
Do you think that's something we need to have?
That research capacity?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for asking, Ed.
Yeah, and if I may, Madam Chair, Ed, just a couple of thoughts and sort of the interesting perspective of the conversation. I personally, and I don't have the data to validate this, and I don't know if we will get that from a state perspective, but I don't think that our students are coming in substantially above or below the other community college students. We have some interesting dynamics because, Laramie County has, Laramie and Natrona have the highest number of high school graduates, so we sort of set the average for the state on just about everything. But I don't believe that they are coming in, and we have a larger preponderance of students who are placing at the lower level of mathematics. Could be wrong, but I don't believe that. But more importantly, I guess, is what I'm becoming to be swayed on is the irrelevance of ACT and Compass scores as an accurate means to place students in development, to determine where they're at. And I think it's one of the things we get hung up on. But even the makers of those tests, ACT, they've always told us and said, don't use this as your only way of placing students into developmental math or developmental English. And yet, because it's so convenient and so easy, we do it. And what they're finding in a large study in North Carolina, you're going to hear a bit about North Carolina in a second. I think large studies going on in California are all suggesting that those placement tests are horrible predictors of whether or not a student is college ready or should place into a college level coursework. What they basically do is predict how well a student will do on another test. And they're finding that cumulative GPA in the high school and other things are actually much, much better predictors. And so the focus on the ACT and the Compass as a way to determine if a student is college ready or not ready, it's starting to be debunked just by the research that's emerging here. The other piece that I'll just say quickly, though, is then the need to differentiate between the cognitive deficiencies and the non-cognitive deficiencies, and I think that's one of the things that we're struggling with more. We have cases, and anecdotes be they, where we'll have students who have academic deficiencies but are mature, highly motivated, and will do just fine in whatever we put before them. We also have students who come to us that are academically capable but lack those things, and we struggle with. And we really don't disaggregate or purposely approach developing the whole student to cover both of those, let alone figure out if Don comes in understanding whether or not he is mature or can communicate well, or some of those skills. And so we don't even know how to address that aspect of it. So in all this, we don't know if it's the academic issues or the non-cognitive issues, and that's one of the things we have to start looking at when we decide and work on placing students into college level coursework.
Thank you very much. And there are many of us on this board of trustees and within the college that this issue has really been weighing on us. And so I'm very happy that we're having this conversation with all of us and all of us working as a team. Because after speaking with Joe, I realize it's not an LCSD 1 and 2 issue. It's not a community college issue. It's not just a state issue. It's a national issue, as Joe has said. And it's something we're going to have to work hard to conquer this problem and even figure out what the problem is.
Yeah, I agree. So as a natural segue then, we do have two fine ladies from our English department here to talk a little bit about what they're doing in this conversation about developmental English and writing and reading and all that good stuff. So Nicole, if you, Liz, would take the podium and...
All right. Good evening. Thank you for having us. So we want to chat a little bit about what we've been working on for the last 6 months or so, more specifically in regards to developmental English, although I think that's just a piece of the puzzle. Those of us who work in developmental English are always looking at how we're doing, what our students' needs are, and how we're best addressing those concerns. More specifically recently, February-ish, Dr. Schaefer sent out a memo that said, hey, there's lots of conversations going. Let's focus those conversations a bit and see where we're at. And so for us, that gave us some places to start looking at how we wanted to address some of the concerns that you're hearing here. To back up just a bit, and you should have received this in some of the information that came to you in the agenda, we had already been making some changes in developmental English. Specifically, Archie Nisley's classes had been making some changes in their formatting to help with moving those developmental English students through the sequence faster. And she has found great success in that process. So she's been offering 8-week sections of English 630 and English 0700. So those would be those 2 levels of developmental writing. And so instead of it taking 16 weeks for a student to go through each of those, which would end up being an entire year of developmental English, they can complete all of that in 1 semester. And she has found that, as you read, that's really raising those success rates in those classes. And there's lots of reasons why that could be. Speculation suggests some of it has to do with simply being able to move those students through in a more timely manner, that they're able to focus, they're able to get it done, and it works well for them. So we had already been doing that since the spring of 2011, and we're continuing that now. Starting in February, when we received the memo from Joe, we started looking at other things that we might do or ways to take the information that we currently have and expand upon it, and continue looking at ways to revise or strengthen. Thanks to the Vice President's Office and initiatives through Dr. Fierro, we were able to send a number of English faculty, including our adjunct English, who was adjunct English faculty then and is now our 1-year appointment, Nate Huseman, and then also math faculty to NAID, which is a developmental learning conference that was held in Denver this late February, early March. And so that was a wonderful opportunity. We had a number of faculty go and were able to bring back incredible ideas and really move that conversation forward in terms of both what's the national conversation, how is that changing, and what are some things that we can bring back here to work with and move forward. I'm going to pass to Liz on this because she did attend NAID, and that moved us to our next place.
So Joe had mentioned a little bit earlier that we could tell you a little bit about what's happening in North Carolina. And by far the best session I went to at NAID was from a panel of presenters from North Carolina, and they call it the Developmental Education Initiative. And I can get you the webpage through email as well, but it's a really, really detailed and thorough webpage that details everything that they've done so far, and it's called successnc.org. But Cynthia Liston was one of the panel presenters for this session, and she works for the community colleges, the community college system in North Carolina, so she's not a faculty member, but she was the most articulate presenter at NAID, and what she was explaining happened in North Carolina, where they have 58 community colleges for English developmental classes, had to do with a lot of your concerns that you brought up. So I just wanted to highlight them because you all are on the right page in terms of the questions that you're asking. And accelerating the pace of the classes, as Archie has done, is something that they do in North Carolina and they've had a lot of success with. Aligning with other state initiatives to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Contextualizing instruction, so making sure that it's based on career and college ready level texts in the classrooms for writing and reading in English. Also increasing flexibility in delivering curriculum, so more hybrid, more online, 16-week and 8-week offerings, and then also improving the placement and diagnostic tools. And particularly in North Carolina, they have added the requirement of a writing sample. So everything that you all are bringing up is right spot on, and something that Cynthia was able to explain in terms of how their program, their revised program for developmental education in North Carolina, was addressing those concerns. So I came back from NAID all excited. I said, there's this woman, she's so articulate, she's explained everything that we are concerned about, and they're already doing it in North Carolina. And Nick and I said, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could bring her in as a consultant? And we approached Jose and Joe and with this idea and brought it back to the faculty as well. And everybody seemed to think similarly to us, that if we could get this person to come visit with us and explain how they have made things work in North Carolina, and help us identify the conversations that we need to have here, both in terms of logistics and also, as Joe was saying, some of the affective areas of developmental education, we could really get a program going for us that would be successful, partly because it's already in action elsewhere, and we're really excited. So we have had conversations with her, and Nick can speak to that more, but keeping in mind some of the goals of accelerating completion, increasing completion, implementing support policies to make developmental English here more successful than it has been. So I think I can turn it back over to Nick. Yeah.
So in order to move things forward, once we'd identified, okay, we're getting to a place where we can see that we're having the same conversations that are happening nationally. We have some resources that we can tap into. What pieces do we need to put in place in-house to prepare to make best use of the information that we're gathering? And so, like any good group, we looked at that and we said, okay, well, we need a task force. So one of the first things we did as a group is to form a developmental English task force that includes all of our developmental English faculty and sometimes our adjuncts, depending upon if they have the time to come and contribute as well. And so we put all of those together and we said, all right, Cynthia Liston is one piece of this. What are our other pieces? How do we start moving that forward? And how do we track what we're doing? So in preparation for consulting with Cynthia Liston and simply to have a framework for our task force, we identified a number of English program revision goals that we felt were essential for us to be able to put revision into process. And so those included things like facilitating student transitions. So if we know that we are having students come from high school, also come from ACEs or GED programs, also come from ESL backgrounds, also come from being away from high school perhaps for a long period of time, how do we ease those transitions? What do we need to do in those places? To empower students to successfully complete developmental courses effectively and efficiently. If we know that an accelerated timepiece helps at least some of those developmental students, how do we strengthen in those areas? To serve developmental English students in the areas of placement and advising, as Dr. Schaefer has spoken to, that's a piece that we can't overlook. How we're assessing these students when they come in, how we're advising them both in process and initially makes a big difference on what we have. So we have to look at that as we look at our courses. To align with other state level initiatives and facilitate generation and collection of data so that the college can both be informed when working on a statewide level, but then certainly when we're speaking and working with areas like Complete College America as well. We need to have effective and useful data, and how do we collect that and make use of it. To organize the newly developed courses in a way that functions within the time-space constraints caused by scheduling and logistics. So on a really simple level, this goal is looking at if we accelerate courses, we also often make a larger block of time. How do we literally have physical space to host a 2 to 3 hour class in a certain place and not displace 3 or 4 other classes that used to be in that classroom? How do we make that work smoothly? But also, how do we make an accelerated schedule for students work in complement with their other coursework, so that if they do decide this is something they want to do, it doesn't decrease their opportunities to be in other classes they might need to be in. So how do we make that work logistically? And finally, importantly, how to empower developmental English faculty with collaborative and pedagogy-based developmental activities. So if we're going to work with all these pieces to empower our students and make sure we're asking the right questions, we also need to make sure we're offering a tremendous amount of support to our faculty. These students are often our most needy, and we need to make sure that we're helping our faculty to have what they need to be fantastic mentors and motivators in those classrooms and, you know, dynamic pieces of the conversation. So those are our goals. From there, we developed a more specific outline of areas that we want Cynthia Liston to help us look at that will ultimately look to revise those courses. We have lots of questions about how we might do that. We have lots of ideas about how we might do that. I'd be more comfortable speaking to some of those specifics once we've met with Cynthia and we get her feedback as well. But the conversation is very active and the task force is very active. Even considering that, you know, it's the middle of summer, I'm really impressed with what our faculty are doing in terms of stepping up and wanting to be part of this conversation.
Wow.
I guess, I will add one thing, sorry. One of the things that is happening nationwide in terms of developmental English as well is a pedagogical shift from having the reading and the writing classes split. So, you know, as Anne was saying, when you look at the charts, you know, our reading cohort is very small. But the pedagogy is now moving toward an integrated reading and writing developmental English sequence. And that is something that the faculty has been in support of, and I think will be a key factor in how we move on from here.
Because we'll just keep doing this back and forth. Because one of the reasons that reading piece is so integral, not just in terms of, wow, we have a hard time collecting that data if we don't see where the reading directly translates into X or Y, is that there's numbers of studies of developmental education that show that students who are placed specifically in developmental reading more than any other developmental course are at most risk in terms of college studies. And, you know, that makes a tremendous amount of logical sense. If they struggle with absorbing information through reading, they're going to struggle in every course that they're in. That's a really fundamental skill for them. And so that seems like a very logical place for us to say, not only do we need to think really carefully about how we're addressing developmental reading, but wouldn't it be great if we integrate it more and therefore they have the opportunity to practice it more?
Dr. Chilton.
Chair. You spoke early about some great success that Archie is having, and of course that's just sort of a relative term, no measurement to put to it there. So I was going to look at this table, KPI 10, Success in Developmental Coursework, and for writing, there's some improvement between 2007, 2008, 2008, and 2009, but things have been relatively flat since that time. Is this success that you're speaking about with Archie, is that just extremely recent and not reflected in this data?
It started in 2011, and it's actually at the bottom of this sheet that came in your agenda packet that says Archie Nisley at the top and does have some statistical data at the bottom. It's simple, there isn't as much there. And
Here, look at mine.
I have a copy that I'm happy to have.
I
Okay.
I just wanted to address that
This was
this
the one.
really was, I helped Marcy do statistical analysis, and it really was a significant improvement.
And I can give you the numbers. If the sheet isn't there, I can certainly read those off to you and make that information available. Perhaps it didn't make it over like we had anticipated. I apologize for that. So data based on 3 semesters, which would be spring of 2011 and spring and fall of 2012. So in English 630, which would be the lowest level of developmental writing, in a 16-week course, average of 15 sections per semester, the success rate was 56%. 12% of students would drop that course. In the exact same course in an 8-week section, so going from 16 weeks to 8 weeks, the success rate would jump to 76%. So from 56% success to 76% success. And instead of 12% dropping, we have a 2% drop rate. In English 0700, in a 16-week section, average there of 26 sections. So we have more students who place into 0700 than do in 630, more sections there. Average success rate in a traditional 16-week section, 62%, 10% would drop. In the 8-week section, 79% would pass, only 4% would drop. So we would consider that fairly successful.
Madam Chair, if you look at table 11D, they're going from the fall 2006 cohort to fall 2007. There was some, I don't know what the numbers are, so I don't know how significant that gain is. But there was a big gain there, and the gain appeared to hold then over the next couple of years. So what happened in there? Any explanation for that?
On that one, the changes that Archie implemented in the writing class would not be reflected in these
Yeah.
on there. And we haven't looked to see what was going on, why there was a big jump and then a drop, and it really seems to have stabilized. That's not one of those questions that, we can look into when we look at this. It's gonna be a matter of prioritizing all these questions. Which one do we think we're gonna get the most gain for if we can figure out the why here on that? So we do have a lot more research to do. Thank you for making notes of your questions. Prioritize things.
Trustee Little?
Madam Chair, I would like to know how we got here. We have developmental courses for a reason. We've had some demand for them. We've had people who want to enroll in them or pay for them. I mean, there's got to be some kind of reason the college got into developmental education. Had to have some kind of calling for it. Can anybody tell me what that history is, why we even have this thing?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Trustee Mosier.
having a few gray hairs. When I came to this campus in '77, we were offering this in varied formats even then. Students were able to go to file cabinets and pursue their math in terms of developmental. We had, of course, in those days, we had a significantly higher average age, so we were really addressing the needs of many returning students. And so they needed, you could call it refresher, remedial, whatever you want, but we were doing it then. And I think prior to that, and someone who knows their history of education better than I do, would be aware, I believe, that K through 12 used to be responsible for providing some of the adult ed services prior to community colleges taking those on. So it's been there. It's just evolved to a point where it's so significant. I think at this point people have kind of put an eye to it because of the cost that Dr. Schaefer mentioned earlier. I'm not sure that totally answered your question, but it's maybe gives you a little perspective on that.
Madam Chair, it does somewhat, but it was first invented or came about as to try to help older students get back acclimated with the academic world. Like if I were to go back to school now, I'd have to have a refresher on algebra, because I don't use it every day, so I understand that. But I'm thinking about people in the community that I know that have kids who maybe weren't really successful in high school. They did okay. The kid graduates from high school, is sitting around the house on a couch. Parents say, you got to go do something. You got to get a job. You got to do something. I know. Why don't you go to college? Okay. So I'll take the test and see where I land. Oh dear, I didn't really learn math in high school, and I thought I did. Well, junior, you really need to go to college because you're not going to sit on my couch for very long. So that parent wants developmental education at this community college to help their student, their child, succeed. That's one kind of thing I see. Another kind of example I see is like a little boy that my husband and I know who is in junior high and cannot read and continues to be passed through classes because his parents do not want him to be held back because that looks bad for him. So I can't say both his parents, one parent. So I can see where that our little buddy is going to graduate from high school and not be able to read. What kind of a job is he going to get if he can't read? So I can see where his parents would say, let's have him go to LCCC because they will teach him to read, and we can't. But if we did not have that opportunity, the public would be furious with us because we're a community college, a comprehensive community college, and we're supposed to be there to help everybody. So to me, there's some kind of a public need, a public expectation that we in the educational community will provide that one more chance for kids to learn or kids to succeed because they didn't get that chance when they were in K-12 for whatever reason. I think it also falls into the change of our culture, whereas teachers are expected to teach kids to learn and skills that allow them to learn, rather than have that be necessarily a responsibility in the home. I think a lot of parents still see that in responsibility in the home. But we as a society want to help kids succeed, even if they aren't given those skills in their home, because we live in a country that want people to succeed. So we say, okay, your parents didn't give it to you, but we will. So, that's a whole different cultural conversation. But there has to be some reason we have this, and we have 100 kids enrolled in it. There's got to be a reason. And now we're looking at ourselves saying we're failing. Well, why do those kids come to us? I think Dr. Schaefer, I was sitting here getting a bit distracted reading Dr. Schaefer's paper, but he even talks about that in this paper. Why are we just looking at academics instead of learning readiness? If a kid isn't motivated to go to school, what in the heck are they doing in our classroom? They're not going to succeed no matter what we do. Well, there's probably a reason. Their parents want them there, their grandparents want them there, society wants them there, because they don't want them sitting at home, right? So that's all I want to say. I would like to know what kind of kids are enrolling and why, because I think unless we know that, we're not going to get anywhere.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you,
Madam Chair,
Carol.
I'd just like to say that ever since I finished teaching in the high school, which is many years ago, I have been called back for many meetings because of the completion rate in high school and kids leaving high school before they finish. And it's over and over and over again. And a kid just told me the other day, you were talking about your neighbor, well, he just told me the other day, he says, well, I can't deliver your paper anymore because I am going to go back to school. He said, I was making advancements in my job, but now I realize that I'm at the top of what I'm going to get because I didn't finish school. And I'm thinking, it's not just, if you read the statistics, like Time Magazine had an article in it a few months back, nationally speaking, kids are not finishing high school. 33% in some of your bigger states do not finish high school. They're the ones that need this remedial stuff that we have to offer in the college, and we do it because out of necessity to these kids because they haven't finished high school. We tried, getting the idea of having the alternative high school, having Triumph, and it helps for some of them that are non-traditional learners, but there's still a lot of them out there. And I think we do a great service to the community to offer this. Yeah, I think it's too bad we have to, but it's got to be done somewhere.
Yeah, I agree, Bill.
You could turn this into an economics discussion and talk about it as a public good, because in reality it is. In terms of, we're much better off as a society, even though I have no direct benefit from that student getting the skills necessary for work. In the broadest sense, not to say that student may stumble on and find a cure for cancer or something, but and not just be the taxpayer, but it is a public good, and that's one way to come at it. Another thing that came to mind that you folks brought up that fascinates me, and that is when you talked about trying to make that student's schedule work when she was using the block. I understand that clearly from past experience there, and I'm wondering if we at one point in time had some block scheduling courses set up for honor students so that they could take honors English, math, and so forth. We got to look at the other end of the spectrum. There ought to be a block schedule for those who need this type of assistance in coursework so that their schedules too then could function.
I would say I'd say those conversations are already probably happening, and one of the places where we're definitely seeing some conversation about that would have to do with first-year experience for students and what we're looking at there in terms of the benefits of having cohorts, how that benefits students in terms of success and retention and support in a number of different ways. And so we're definitely considering that among other pieces to try and help students succeed. Absolutely.
Madam Chair, something she said made me think of this. When in Dr. Schaefer's paper too, he talks about how what really seems to make a difference is having like a tutor, somebody there with a one-on-one kind of situation, rather than putting somebody in a classroom. But I'm thinking of like Sage Trio and the kind of folks that we see there, where they're given where those students are given very, very special attention and strong motivation of basically saying, I will not let you fail, or you're going to have to answer to me personally. I mean, there's something very powerful about that. And it would be very interesting if we could somehow look at, if we really want to give students another chance, we really want people to succeed, which I think we do, that's why we have these programs, then how much can we start integrating those kinds of relationships? And I'm sure that's part of the discussion too.
I think it would probably definitely come in when we start looking at the advising piece and the assessment piece, because we'll look at, okay, maybe, well, definitely, it's not enough to just have that first step where we advise and we find out where they start. We need to have supportive pieces in place through their college career with us, but certainly, especially for those at-risk students that are in developmental sequence, how can we advise them and support them a little bit more interpersonally and dynamically?
And that's expensive, right? That takes money.
But that's why we're here. Liz?
Well, just if I may, Brenda, there's a really nice succinct definition of the developmental education model. It's not on there.
Oh.
It's just on mine. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But that was going around at NAID, and it's that the most effective developmental education model embeds support within the classroom and outside the classroom, as opposed to the remediation model, which tended to be more of an identify what's wrong than fix it approach. And so Sage Trio, financial aid, advising, and then also the counseling for the affective challenges, putting all those things together is kind of the big picture and the goal. So yeah, we're talking about what we would do with the English classes, but campus-wide, it's going to be this system and making all those pieces work even more closely together. So you're absolutely right. But yeah, thinking of it as embedding the support within the classroom and outside of the classroom for that success that's what we would hope would happen.
Yeah. But you got to find the funding for that and the people to do it.
we got lots of people who want to.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
yeah, Don and I are fortunate to serve on the committee that's looking into BOCES and BOCHES. And I just think in terms of the goals that we looked at just the other day in that meeting and the discussion, which focused a great deal on having those students as they move to college, that they have a transitional advisor, I think was the term that was used, and the preparation for those folks as they come to a community college or into higher ed. And I don't know, but I would hope one other goal that was in there that Brenda, when she was board chair, started working on, and we're still struggling with that, and that was articulation, both math, reading, and English. And I would hope I know Dr. Schaefer is trying to get things moving there, and it is a struggle, but getting the people coordinated. And I would hope that as you work on these task force, that maybe some way you can involve those folks, and maybe you're already doing that.
Well, one of the unique pieces of my job is I sort of sit on all of those task forces. So I'm also on the concurrent enrollment task force and the initiatives that we do there. And so absolutely we're having those conversations as well. We're looking at how articulation happens. And much like this conversation, how do we actually assess that in ways that are student-friendly and beneficial, and we get a clear picture of what student need is, how they're transitioning from one place to another. Are we doing what we need to do? We're definitely asking those questions there, and we're certainly looking at the issues of articulation there as well. And so it's a nice nesting piece to have those together, because certainly English and math, we have concurrent enrollment. English and math, we have developmental coursework, and so having all of those pieces working near one another and sometimes crossing when necessary helps to keep those pieces in conversation with one another in ways that are really dynamic, I think, to move forward.
And Madam Chair, trustees, to move us along in the conversation, you can start to see, and you probably already understand this, that this is such a wonderfully complex issue that we have to deal with, and it's something that the further you dig, the further you realize how little you understand why we're doing it, what's happening, where's the issues, where's the solutions, all of those things. And it's not going to take any one singular approach, and that's why we're encouraging you in this year's budget to set aside $200,000 for student services. That'll go towards an advising model. It's why we're going to put money towards innovation here. It's why we're working on a BOCHES and all of those things to help start identify solutions that collectively and cumulatively will help move the needle in regards to college readiness and our ability to get students to college ready and ultimately to succeed. It's one of the things that makes our jobs and this career so frustrating at times, but also so rewarding. These are the issues that, if we can solve, are truly going to help change America, help change the world, and all that good stuff. I fundamentally believe that. And so do these ladies, and so do our next folks, Craig and Dean, who are here to talk a little bit about mathematics. And I'll say as they go up to the podium, we've been having this conversation. Boy, I think it was last summer, Dean, when we were up in Casper, and every time I turn around in a conversation about developmental mathematics or developmental education, I see Dean there. So I appreciate what he's doing and his focus on educating our students and what they're really working on and looking at in mathematics as well as English. So, gentlemen.
Ed, may I say something before our gentlemen start talking about math? Ladies, you give me hope. You really give me some hope. And thank you for everything you're doing. And I'm hoping myself that this is the kind of information that we can share with the other community colleges if they are not already doing their own work. It's something that we want to make Wyoming stronger. So thank you, both of you. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Welcome.
I hate following that act.
Too bad.
I would too, if I were you.
What I'd like to do is kind of give you an introduction and kind of turn it over then to Dean to fill you in on the details of the mechanics of how it works. Prior to 2011, we had face-to-face remedial classes. We run 3 levels, 900, 920, and 930. Math 1000 requires 920
as a prerequisite. Math 1400 requires 930 as a prerequisite, or you can test into Math 1000 or Math 1400 based on your ACT scores or your Compass testing scores. To give you an idea of the magnitude of what we're dealing with, the lowest semester since I have been here in a year and a half, we have run just a little over 635 students in our math developmental program. The highest semester since I've been here has been a little over 800 students in a typical semester. So it's a monumental challenge. We're dealing with huge numbers. It was decided in the fall of 2011 to go to the Emporium model. I think that my predecessor looked at a lot of different programs and models and decided that there's a lot of advantages to that model. The Emporium program, and I'll let Dean really get into how that works, but the advantages of the Emporium model, and it was funded through a grant by Bill and Melinda Gates. We received $40,000 to implement it, which proved to be underfunded. But the Emporium model has some advantages that I think are important to understand. The first instinct is to say, well, are we going to produce better academic results? Are we going to get a higher percentage of students that are being successful? Are they going to enroll into the higher level of math and continue with their education and be more successful using this model? Unfortunately, we only have 3 semesters of data on that. I can tell you that we don't have that data just yet, but I think that what you will see is that the data will be very similar in success rate to when we ran face-to-face remedial math classes. I don't think you're going to see a substantial jump. We did see kind of a jump in Math 920, but in 930 and Math 900, when I look back over the data of the face-to-face classes for the prior 5 years, I didn't see a substantial difference, but we're going to take a look at it. The advantages of the Emporium model are pretty substantial. First of all, we can handle those 700 students using 2 classrooms. So we reduce the number of classrooms that are required. We also can handle them with reduced staff. But the real beauty of the Emporium model, the students can move along at their own pace. So if a student tests into Math 900, moving at their own pace, during that one single semester, they can transition into Math 920, and they can transition into Math 930. Now, the fee for the program that the student pays is $75. So it is conceivable that a student can complete 3 semesters of math in one semester for $75. So you can see the cost savings for that student. It's pretty substantial. For the first time this year, we had a student do exactly that. Student that went through all 3 levels. Now we know, the research shows that the faster you get a student into college level math, the more successful that student will be, and the more likely they will continue in their program. So that's an important component with this whole thing. Let me have Dean go ahead and kind of fill you in on the details of how it looks.
Well, we have students show up to a classroom, and they spend 1 hour a week in the classroom with an instructor. And that instructor goes around the classroom and finds out exactly where that student is, and more or less advises the student on trying to get the student to proceed and come to class on time, and not, many of them don't even show up, you know, and we drop a lot of them at the very beginning, so we encourage the student to complete the class. And that 1 hour a week, I think, is a very important hour. And we have had a lot more success since we have been pushing this and having the students, working with the students. A lot of times they'll say, what am I going to do? I'm going to try to get you through this course. What do I have to do to get you through this course? You're not showing up to the lab, or you're not doing this. How can I do it? And put the burden back on the student, and that seems to help. And so working with these students for that hour is a very crucial time, and I think that has led to a lot better success than what we have. Then the student, in order to fill out their 3 credit hours, report to a lab, a mathematics lab, and in that lab they can come anytime from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 in the evening, Monday through Friday. They can come Saturday from 9 o'clock to noon, and on Sunday from 2 to 4, anytime, and get 2 hours in the lab. And we track those hours, and we give, per week, we give those trackings back to the instructor. So the instructor, when he sits down with that student in that hour that he relates to the student, he can say, you weren't in the lab this week at all. What's the problem? So we track them, encourage them, and because of that, we have seen some increase in the completion rate. And it's a lot of encouraging these students. These students, many of them are afraid of mathematics. And they have math phobia that you wouldn't believe in. And we have to try to overcome that. And I think we're doing that inside those, in the classroom, working with each one of them. When they're in the math lab, we've now got a new math lab, and we're able to handle more students. That's not the issue. We just got more room that we can move around between students. They're not so crammed in there. And plus the fact that they can get their questions answered. They put up a yellow cup. We go over and work with the student, help them through the problem, and encourage them. A lot of students say, well, I just can't learn. I need an instructor to help me through each one of the steps. Well, we have videotapes that actually are lectures that have been developed here on this campus with instructors that have actually taught this and used their notes to make these lectures. So they are getting a lecture, plus the fact they're also getting help, individual help, as they need it. They put up a yellow cup and someone goes over and helps them. We've increased the number of people within the lab. Before it was maybe just one person during the time that instructor was assigned to work in the lab. And now we've got student help that's been very helpful, people that have come out of calculus and in that area, and now help our own students, helping tutoring these students in the lab. So we're seeing some success, and this success, I think, is showing that we're getting more completion. We're getting less students that are frustrated with the program. When we first started it, everyone just threw up their hands, and students said, I can't do this, and we're not. And I think Craig can allude to that. He's had less and less students come into his office and complain about the program. So we've been working on getting this Emporium model to work. That's been a big headache. There's a lot of components to actually get the program to work. Pearson has the software that we're using is not on, our students get on and log on to the computer, and we've got to coordinate the efforts of Pearson, who is the publisher, with our students. Students will show up, sometimes they can't get onto the system, and we have to call Pearson and try to find. All those things are logistic type problems that we've had to address, and I think we've got those pretty well ironed out. Now what we're doing is trying to get those students on, their problems taken care of logistically right now. rather than having go on a day or two, and I think that's been a success also. So we're doing a lot of work in trying to get this model up and going. As you know, any model has its weak points, and I think to address why some of these students are having difficulty in going through this model and coming out on the other end and then having difficulty in 1,000 or 1,400 is the way mathematics is being taught today. These students are trying to learn it step by step, memorizing steps, using it as a template to try to solve another problem, and it's just like memorizing a play. 2 or 3 days later, they forgot it. We've got to somehow get back to teaching the concept that we think the battery of problems that we give the students should teach. Those students that are going on in calculus that have the ability in mathematics can extrapolate out of that battery of problems, can extrapolate the mathematical concepts. These students that are having difficulty can't. And what they're doing is they're memorizing steps. It's kind of like the old stimulus response idea. We'll give you a stimulus, we get a response, and then we'll give you a reward, and then we'll pick up the response and make it a stimulus, and the reward is that a boy, keep on going, and that sort of thing. And sometimes we can get them through and get all the way through, get their grade, and they have difficulty in transferring that information from one module to another. And I don't think that's necessarily our model's fault. It's the way we teach math today. We've changed. It's all problem solving. And we don't teach the concepts like we should. But I'll guarantee you, there's a shift coming. I took a course at the University of Oregon this year, and the shift is coming. It's moving away from procedural and going back to concepts now. We've done a full circle in about 20 years, and we're coming back. And I've seen it on both sides. I probably taught most of your grandparents. So I'm now seeing it come around. I started with the new math, and now I'm, okay, but anyway. We say, keep on going, keep on going. One of these days, you'll be a president. Or
College
keep
president?
on going, keep on going. You'll be a interim dean here at CCC. No, I'm just teasing.
I don't know that I could pass through.
But anyway, that's kind of where we're at, and we're really working hard at it. We really are.
The bottom line is that when we implemented this in the fall of 2011, we didn't do real well. We did. We had our bumps in the road, and it took a long time for that to smooth out. I think we're now at a point, though, where we're ready to move to the next level. I think there's several things that we as a math department need to address. I've heard a lot of the same issues in English. We're dealing with those in math. Getting everybody to pull in the same direction and decide on a direction. One of the things that we learned when we implemented this is that we've got to kind of stay the course, ride the pony, and then start fixing the things that aren't working. And I think down the road, we have an opportunity. We've got 3 semesters under our belt. I think we have a feel for what's wrong, and now we need to move to the next level. So I think there's a lot of work to be done down the road. And we'll quit talking and give you an opportunity to ask questions.
Dr. Kilty?
Madam Chair. I've got a number of questions here I would like to ask. You said that you started this really in the fall of 2011, but wasn't it, you were doing some of this in the fall of 2010?
It was
Spring, I think.
It was in 2010. It was in that previous summer, is my understanding, during summer school, is that they did a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did a full implementation. Thank you. In the fall of 2011.
Of 2010.
clarify the timeline. In the summer of 2010,
Yes.
a team went to a conference to learn about this, and that's when the grant was awarded. So the fall of 2010 was, they're working on how the model is going to be here. It was actually first done for some classes in the spring of 2011, but most of the classes were the face-to-face, and it was fully implemented in fall 2011. The developmental math classes, both here and at the Albany County campus. The UW math classes are in a different model because it serves UW. But then since fall 2011, it's been fully implemented in our main campuses.
Okay. Madam Chair, the Emporium model, I think I've got a good idea of why it's called an Emporium model and so forth. It sort of looks like a place where you go in and grab various things that you think you need at the time, apparently. Sort of like our Emporium here on campus. But are there competing models? And are there competing models to the Emporium model?
Absolutely.
And do some of our faculty members, do they suggest that we might try some of those too?
You know, I don't know. I can tell you that when I came on board, this was the model that was adopted. Now that process of how this model was adopted, my understanding was that the previous administration looked at several models, decided that this was probably the model to be looked at, sent a team of teachers out to take a look at the model, and it was decided that was how the process, I understand, worked.
Madam Chair. Oh, all right, we've got that history down okay, but what I'm talking about is, are there competing models? For example, Dean was emphasizing the need to go back toward concepts and not just memorizing steps in a process. And can that conceptual model be incorporated into this Emporium, or does it require something else?
I think it can be, incorporated in, and I think this is some of the ideas that some of the math the faculty have. That what would it take to take the model that we now have and modify it in a way to emphasize more concept learning than procedural learning. And there's some ideas on that. And some of the math faculty have already shared those ideas, and I think that those are on the table and need to be looked at.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
You talked about running 600 students. Now, is that on a yearly basis, 600
That's on the
students?
semester.
So you have a rather large cohort here, and it would be possible to maybe run a couple of different models in competition with one another and compare the results, yes? And you could jump in on this too if
Theoretically possible, yes.
So in other words, we could run some courses the way that you're currently running the Emporium. We could run some cohort of courses where you try to incorporate models in, where you teach concepts and so forth again, and see how they compare to one another. Yes?
Could be. I think that there's also, and I just might mention this, I went to the NADE conference also, and one of the main models that is coming out of, that I heard about at NADE in February, was a model of pathways in which, and it's coming out of the University of Texas, and it also has a co-requisite side to it, and that's also a model. And I think this is a model that might be very appealing. And I tell you that because it would support the concept model. It would also probably line up with what the University of Oregon is going to do in a couple of years. So this is just my thoughts,
Madam Chair, I'll ask maybe just one more question, and then I'll move on and let someone else ask some. But, oh, no, I really do have two more that I would like to ask. Craig, you mentioned that you don't think that there's a great deal of improvement in the results. You've got a table in here that compares the fall 2010 traditional to the fall 2011 redesign. And the results seem to be pretty significantly different. However, if you go back to these other figures, none of this improvement really seems to be reflected in the, which table is it? It's probably 10. 10? Yeah, 10, which looks like the success rate in the developmental coursework has really been pretty flat, and maybe even has declined a little bit, although I don't know how significant that is once again.
We have been,
Well, let me address the one table that I assume you're looking at. What we did is we went back and we took common questions, common math questions, and we applied those to the face-to-face classes, and then we allowed the ones that went through the first semester of the Emporium model, and we gave them to a group of students. And the data that you see in there, where they had an 80-some% accuracy rate compared to the face-to-face, those are only on a sampling of common questions that we asked those that had gone through the face-to-face compared to those who had gone through the Emporium model. Okay, now, when I look at, my comment about success rate, typically we're running through face-to-face. If you look through the history of that, it stays in around the 58% to 62%. We only made it into the close to that in Math 920. The others run about 2% lower. Dan?
Just to follow up on Craig was saying, we did for the 3 semesters through fall 2012, we did look at by developmental course to compare success rates with the current Emporium model with the previous one. In the very first semester, fall 2011, we actually found significantly higher success rates in the new model for 0920. Not the other 2 classes weren't significantly different on the success rate. There was significantly higher attrition, but that's artificially inflated because of the way they do the Emporium. If the students don't show up that first couple of weeks, they're dropped. They're dropped by instructor on there. So with some of those kinks working out and getting that. And then when we did it in the spring of 2012 and fall 2012, we didn't really find many significant differences on there. We'll be looking at this past spring again by the course level in the next month or so. We have to finalize the spring enrollment report, and then we'll start working on these follow-up projects. The other comment I wanted to make was that we're going to start being able to track the subsequent enrollment for these. Even though I only included that full 3-year tracking in these slides, I can run our program every fall. We'll do it every fall, so I can have 1 year data for 2 different cohorts with the new Emporium model, and I can have 5 semester data for that fall 2011 cohort. So we're going to start being able to see that tracking and see if we're having the impact on that success in the subsequent course, which is really the whole point of developmental. So we're going to start having more and richer data on this conversation on there. And because of a lot of the hiccups in implementing the new Emporium model, we've been trying to help them monitor it to make sure it's fully in place first before we decide, oh, it's not working. Because really, we've only got 3 semesters worth of preliminary, rudimentary data, just course level. We haven't done the tracking yet. So we have I wanted to let you know we have plans to do that. I've been working with Craig and the math faculty to try to put some of those measures in place so we can really monitor the success of it now that it's really more smoothly implemented.
One of the things keeping in mind with the Emporium model is that it's divided up into modules. The student goes in, they have to complete a homework assignment, the same as if they were in a face-to-face. They complete that homework assignment, then they can take a pre-test. Then they take a test on that module. Within each of the levels, 900, 920, 930, for example, in Math 900, there's like 6 modules. to move through the program, you have to move through all of the modules. To move from module 1 to module 2, you have to take an exam. And you have to have a completion rate on that exam of 80% or you can't move on. If you don't move on, if you score less than 80% on that, you have to back up, go back and redo it. Now, it gives you different questions, different homework, different pre-tests, and then they can come back. They can take that test up to 3 times, and then they move on to the next module. And then at the end of that particular course, then they have to take a final exam. We know it's a common final exam for everybody. We know that when they complete Math 900, we know exactly if they scored 80% competency rate on that, and we know exactly what they're capable of doing before they can move on. Student could sign up for 900, go in there, and we've had, and this is not uncommon, halfway through the semester, they have finished the entire thing, taken the final, we roll them straight into Math 920. They start with 920 with the next module, they move right on through. So they can move as fast as they're dedicated. Also keep in mind that once they attain 12 absences in the program, they're dropped from the program. So the pressure for them to show up is pretty great. We know that if students start not showing up, we know they're not going to be successful anyhow.
Adam? This is a question for both the English and the math developmental people, but you specifically mentioned videos and things like that. I don't know if there are videos involved in the English, but I'm just wondering, are all these videos accessible? Are they captioned and things like that for handicapped students?
You know, one of the beauty of the program, the student can get on from home. They can go through and they can review the work, the assignments, the homework. If they don't understand a particular math concept, they can go in, take a look at that video, and it'll teach them that concept, and then as many times as they want.
We've got, our videos are captioned, and we haven't done good enough job to make sure that those captioned videos have been available for our students. I just talked to Lee yesterday, and he was saying, you know, we got these, what are we going to do with them? And so we haven't made it, I don't think, we haven't advertised it right. And we need to get with Les Balsinger and his area and make sure that these are all made available. We've requested them to be put on the new D2L system, and students actually download them now and put them on the thumb drive and then take them home and put them on their computer. But, you know, they should be able to get it on D2L. And why have to make students download these videos when it's part of the course? So we're working on that. And that's an area that we need some work on. It was just brought to my attention this week from Les that we need more work in that area.
The bottom line is that math is so critical. We have 67 programs of study out here. If you don't get through math, you're dead in the water. Are we doing enough to help them be successful in math? No, we're not. I think there's a lot of interventions that we need to put in place. I think there's some support services that we can put into place. And I think we're at a point right now where we have a better understanding of what the Emporium model can do, but we also understand what it can't do. I think we need to go in and we need to take a look and redo some of the content. We need to upgrade a lot of the videos. We need to provide, in my mind, we need to provide a place where students can go and have a face-to-face instructor where they can get support on concepts that they don't understand. I think we need to provide additional tutorial services for students, not just at the developmental level, but even at the 1400 level, because we need to do more to help them become successful in 1400. Math 1000 doesn't seem to be as critical a problem. So there's a lot we can do, and we need to do that.
Trustee Bozier, I think, I'm sorry, Brenda. I
It-
think you
No, that's
first.
Just so there's a picture of this, with the 700 students, how many total students do we have that register for this remedial math? And in the context of delivery, are we delivering, is this Emporium model delivering to all of those students? You mentioned just as a moment ago that some students are able to, or are they not able to have face-to-face? So I'm wondering, do we have a combination of face-to-face classes? Do we have the Emporium Lab? Are we online? And how does this reflect what we're doing at UW? Because I believe you indicated earlier that some of the UW math is not incorporated into this, the numbers.
The UW math, because those are UW students and we're trying to prepare them for those classes, those are not part of the Emporium model. And correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, I think Albany County campus and this campus is all Emporium model. I'm not sure if we have any online or not. At one semester we didn't, it was all Emporium, but I'm not sure what happened after the first semester, so I'll let you guys add.
Typically, the only service, remedial services the University of Wyoming offers is a kind of a tutorial program, where a student that enrolls over there can go into a tutorial program for additional help. It's kind of like our SAGE TRIO program.
No, but that we're offering. I don't care about UW, what
Okay.
we're doing.
So any student that enrolls at UW that doesn't meet their requirements for math, college level math, typically goes to our Albany County, and they go through the Emporium model, the same as what we offer here. We work together on it. Is that?
Yes, that's what I was looking for. So in both
That's
cases,
not correct, correct.
That is
Took
not
me a long
correct.
time to figure that one out.
Lynn is saying that that is not
Yeah.
correct,
What-
but.
The UW model, we're teaching their developmental students, which is roughly 400 students per semester at the university, which to me is a completely different population of students than the students we get at the ACC. The ACC was part of this grant, so we are doing strictly the Emporium model at the campus. But the university students who are taught at the university are actually taught face-to-face.
But by our
By us.
instructors. Okay. But they're not by the UW instructors.
No.
As part of their program.
Right.
so in following along, so my picture is we have face-to-face for the UW students who are working through LCCC to get their remedial work in math. We have the Emporium for the ACC campus and for Cheyenne. Do we offer any face-to-face or online in that
We
context?
do offer online, and it's basically the Emporium model, but it's administrated by a teacher that's taught online. We do offer a face-to-face, and it's out on the base, and the way we have that set up, it's part of the fast track where you can go into, say 9:30, the first 8 weeks. If you're successful, we offer the next 8 weeks math for 1400. Interestingly enough, one of the things that happened is the first semester of last year, I had a lot of students coming into my office and basically claiming that they could not pass math because they can't learn from a computer, they can't use this model, it doesn't work. So what we did is we put in 3 face-to-face classes, and then what we decided we would do, students that really seemed to need an instructor, we would target those students and provide them with a face-to-face. By the end of the spring semester, we could not fill those 3 classes. In fact, there were 4 students that were the biggest, they really had to have that face-to-face. Once they understood the advantage of the Emporium model, they never enrolled in it. I ended up having to cancel the face-to-face classes because of low enrollment. Students started to, we didn't do a good job of explaining the concept when we first implemented it. Once we did a better job of that and our instructors had a better feel for how to do it, students weren't interested in the face-to-face. Now, on the base, that class does fill. But that's, you know, those basically, a lot of those are base personnel that fill that.
With what's being taught on the UW need for remedial work, face-to-face courses, are those set with the same outcomes? Or are they getting more of the concepts? I'm just wondering, since the shift is back to concepts, I'm just wondering what, if we're doing something different there than what we're doing for all the rest.
I requested last year a copy of the syllabus and their core competencies, and what we have in place aligns perfectly with what they were teaching in their classes.
And they are, you're talking about UW?
UW.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I called over there and they sent me a copy of their syllabuses and everything, and I compared them with what we're doing, not only in the developmental, but also in Math 1400.
Trustee Little.
I think I'm kind of slow finally getting to what we're talking about, but let me give it a shot. We have parents who, not just parents, we have people who buy this product for various reasons. We have parents who buy the product so their kids can hopefully succeed in college. We have the University of Wyoming who buys our product so that we can help their students succeed in college. So we have a product that we are selling that people are buying for as many reasons as there are people, why they're buying our product. So then we need to make sure that we have a product that works and that people will continue to buy and that is successful for our calling, which is to provide higher education. And so we're looking at different ways to improve our product. Is that really what we're talking about here?
We are.
So, okay.
We are. And we're going, every college, and I did an awful lot of research on this. You know, you gotta, is the Emporium model the panacea for our problem? No, it's not. There are a lot of models out there, and all of them
Right.
have limited success. Is this the best of what's available?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it is, in looking at the research and everything. Is it gonna solve our problem? No, we've got a long ways to go.
But one idea is we could say, you could buy this product, which is the student gets face-to-face teaching. You could buy this product, which is a computer program that somebody can do from home. So we're also looking at all of those kind of options too. Am I getting it?
I'm not sure the face-to-face option is on the table.
Okay.
It isn't.
Okay.
I think Dr. Joe would like to make a comment.
Okay, all right, thanks, everybody.
And I know Don has a question, so I don't want, it's a fair analysis. The difference is that the people purchasing the product, if you will, and I know educators, our hackles go up when we hear these things like a product and all that.
I'm sorry, educators.
No, that's okay, that's okay. I have thick skin and small hackles. But one of the things that we have to recognize, and really what creates the complexity, is the people purchasing, if you will. And so because the taxpayers, because the state, because the federal government, because the students, all of those things, we have, and you have as trustees, a responsibility to ensure that you put the best product on the table to do that. And there are times and what we're hearing more and more and more and more in the community college research world and all those things, that there are times where fewer options is better. So students don't do optional, so that has to be mandatory. And so there are things that we need to do to direct people to the places and the ways that they will be most successful. And that's I think one of the fundamental shifts here in the mind of let's offer a little bit of everything. In fact, that's been one of the downfalls of a lot of educational reform is we try to pilot everything to death. And those pilots almost always show success, but never are scaled. And we need to get to the point where we do our research, we make the best decision that we can based on that evidence, and we move in that direction, and we continue to improve and improve and improve until at which time we cannot improve anymore, or a better option comes to light here. And so that's sort of the direction we're taking. Inevitably, if we have a bunch of pilot programs going or a bunch of options, we never actually change the overall momentum, if you will, of the students.
What do you mean by never scaled? The pilot programs are never scaled. I don't understand that concept.
What I mean is they happen and you select a small group of people, a limited frame of time, and you say, we're going to do this and do it differently. It's usually a handful of faculty that are willing to adopt and to do that. And then when they say, this seems to work, here's what it means, and it changes the very fabric of the culture of the institution, it never happens. Or if they become cost prohibitive and those types of things. You know, somebody referenced the SAGE TRIO model, and Rachel's here, I know, so she can nod or shake her head here. We know it's effective. It's incredibly expensive, and if you had to scale that to millions of students, just doesn't work. Those are the types of things we're dealing with, the scalability of what they're calling high-impact practices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Erickson.
I have a couple questions relative to tracking. Now, you're tracking the Emporium students, and you're going to continue that through what longevity? Well, let me ask my other question as well. The English folks, you're thinking of fast tracking with 8 weeks. Has that been implemented?
Through Arshi's courses, we do have 8-week sections,
Okay.
yes.
All right, and is there tracking going on with those activities with the 8-week fast track? So I'm kind of interested in the longevity of following these students.
All of these changes are embedded in the information I was sharing with you earlier. And a lot of it, because the changes are fairly recent, we haven't seen the impact of them yet. But as we work with the developmental math, for example, when we run our program in the fall to look at that subsequent enrollment, I'll have 2 cohorts that are going to start showing up in my tracking model. We generally track them over 3 years. If we decide that we need to track them longer term, we can implement that in the future, but right now it's that 3-year tracking. And as well as Arshi's accelerated courses, those are embedded in the tracking we're already doing. That is something, again, with more research capacity, we could tease out and look at by course level or by I don't want to say Arshi's because somebody else might adopt it, but by that accelerated model versus the full semester model on those 2 courses, we can start to tease those things out. And as I said earlier, when I was talking about all of that data, it's going to become a matter of prioritizing which of these follow-up research questions do we think is going to have the most impact, or which one is the most important to the college right now, given all of these things we want to work at. And once we have that done, my office will be happy to dive in and look at the data for you.
Thank you, Ann.
Well, and I think that's essential in order for us to have data that we can then use to make judgments as to whether these models have been successful. And, you know, they both sound extraordinarily good for someone that's not involved in what you're doing. But I think it's also important that we see whether we have really achieved a difference down the road. And so you're saying 3 years, you follow them through their educational process. Do you also follow them, if you can, if they don't go into the education, they don't go beyond, say, an associate degree, and they go into the workforce?
We do all kinds of getting broader picture now. We do all kinds of longitudinal tracking on different subsets of our students. Students who come in saying they're seeking a degree, I follow for 4 years to see if they graduate, are they still enrolled, did they transfer someplace. We need to work on better methods of getting data to see if they're in a career technical program, do they get employment after they graduate? We have right now just self-reported data at a state level. We're still probably 3 years away from fully implementing it. We're working on a state longitudinal data system, so we'll be able to answer those questions. So we're putting a lot of pieces in place to do that. Once we've identified a cohort, we can keep tracking them for Complete College America. Actually, some cohorts I'm now going to be tracking for 5 and 6 years because the state is part of that thing. So part of that project. So a lot of these things, once we've identified the cohort, if it's a priority, if it's going to give us good, useful information, once we've identified them, we can keep tracking. The hard part is going back and saying that group that started in fall 2009, can we start there and track them forward? Well, if they're not in a group I've already identified, it's really time consuming and probably not a productive way to spend our resources. But as we start putting things in place and thinking about how we're going to assess effectiveness of these things while we're developing them, then we can put those things in and have much better systems in it. Sure.
Thank you.
You know, John, one of the things, that, and I think what you're saying is extremely important. You know, we can't ensure success with this program. What we have to ask, and the critical question is, are we providing students the best opportunity for success? And I think the only way we're going to be able to determine that in the long run is through that data that you're talking about.
Any other questions? Butch?
What's K through 1 doing? Are they doing any kind of an emporium model, or is there any coordination between what's going through K through 12 and what's going on at community college?
There isn't.
Why is that?
Well, there is at East. East has a model very similar to this for their developmental people. It's similar to what we have. I think they use Pearson product like we use Pearson product. They have a lab over there. It's for their remedial people. I don't know about Central, I just know about East. And
as far as us meeting with them and working together, it's a good idea though.
And down, you know, all of a sudden from K1 through K12, now we have the Common Core Standards, which is really being grabbed a hold of across all the states. And that's going to have a big impact on what's being done and how they're going to address the remedial side of that. I don't think they've talked about that. They've identified the scope of the topics that they're going to have to cover in that Common Core, but I don't think that they've really addressed how they're going to handle the remediation.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and I had heard about the concepts before. What I would like to do is to ask all of these folks to come back to our retreat in January and give us an update, if that's appropriate, with our president, if he thinks that's appropriate.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we will certainly keep you abreast of this and give you updates, and we'll keep these individuals engaged in the conversation. And if that's at the retreat and we can make that work, I believe I could encourage them, or if not bribe them, to to come back and share that. But my hope is that through all this, you start to see the complexity of the problem that we're trying to face, and you know, just in the last conversation about mathematics alone, dealing with the difference and the muddling between delivery mode and methodology versus content and curriculum. And I'll keep saying this, and sooner or later we'll get traction on it. We have a lot of work to do at LCCC in regards to consistency in our curriculum. We are teaching all over the board, and so we cannot say with any certainty, no matter what data we put behind it, that this outcome really equals that outcome or equals that outcome if we're teaching different things. And so what we need to get to the point is when we design our curriculum, we look at what the outcomes of that coursework is. If our outcome in mathematics is to teach a concept and a student has to be able to articulate and tell you what that concept is, we need to assess for that, not just solve the problem. And if that's what they need to do, let's assess for that. And we are making a lot of assumptions about what students can or can't do based on the content we're delivering. We're not actually looking at that, and we're not making that consistent across the instructors and all that stuff. From there, then we test the viability of the different delivery methods, whether it's Emporium or distance or accelerated or things like that. And I'll keep beating that drum because our fundamental work resides in creating learning outcomes that we can assess that are consistent across all delivery mechanisms for courses, and then we can truly look at which ones are working and which ones may not be working. The other thing, and just because I can't avoid putting in the plug here, we need to be focused on using good information and good evidence to drive our decisions and to further look into the inquiry that we need to do and create interventions. We have 2 people on this campus, Ann and Heather in Ann's office. And we simply do not have the capacity to do the types of studies and the tracking and the things that we know we are going to need to do. And so working with Ann, I did put 2 positions in the hopper for this year in the prioritization process, dealing with complex research and statistical analyses. I don't think they're going to rank at the top this year, and I don't think that's where your priorities are for this year, but they're going in this year, and as we look at subsequent years, this is an area we simply have to invest in.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I want to echo what I just heard here, because you have one trustee that is going to be pushing that upward, that particular priority. Because I think that is a major responsibility of the board, to be able to justify how we're spending the money. And if we don't have the data, we can't make judgments.
Agreed?
Madam Chair.
Yes. Trustee Mosier.
Along with that same concept, though, I'm going to argue that the state's spending a lot of money, and the state's got some issues, as one of our board members knows, relative to centralizing computer systems. And I'm, for one, given the fact that the commission was able to hold on to their positions, I believe, I would expect that they provide and work very closely in helping the colleges with this data. It's not to say that Ann doesn't need help, because I agree she does, but I really feel the state needs to carry some of that burden, because they're asking for and demanding this. And if they don't provide assistance to us, I think it's unfortunate in terms of us then having to make some decisions that don't provide instruction, where we're asked to provide some other kind of support. So it concerns me. And just a cheap plug here, Brenda was right on when she was talking about product. As an educator, the product is a service we offer, not the students. So kudos to you, Brenda.
Thank you, Ed.
Well, with those comments, we will wrap up this subject, and we will move on to student services, student lounge, and bookstore renovations.
Thank you, Madam
And
Chair.
all of you may leave if you would like. You don't need to stay.
Take the shackles.
Thanks, everybody, for staying with us.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you all. I think that's, they're more likely to come back to your retreat if you let them go now, yes.
Yeah. We served you.
Bye, Erin.
Thank you so much. Bye, Erin.
See you guys.
Madam Chair, members of the board, just some quick introductory remarks. You've heard this from me now a few times, but wanted to give you a little bit more detail, especially in light of the fact that we will most likely be bringing to you a couple of action items at your June 19th meeting in regards. But I just want to talk a little bit about some summer/fall renovation projects that we will be doing and are actually ready to begin in some cases, but to again provide the backdrop, and then Carol and Tim are here to give you some details on the specific projects. But we have 3 primary projects that I want to speak to, and they all deal sort of with serving students better. We really started looking at the way we're configuring and providing our student services, both in light of the new building that we're working on, the Student Center, University Center, but also when Judy got here, really recognizing that there are things we simply need to do now to serve our students better. Our front door experience is lacking. We've had our core admissions folks, we've called them recruiters, but they have a function that is much broader than recruiting and admissions, that haven't even had offices or been on campus. We have spaces in student services right now that cannot, are not conducive to confidential conversations regarding financial aid, student records issues, those types. There are simply some things we needed to do. To do those things, we needed to find some space. And even though we will be building a building, hopefully here in 3 years, and have one up to accommodate some of this, I don't think we can wait to do that. So we've asked, okay, what are some interim solutions that will get us through, that make sense for the institution? That led us to look at the current student services space and say, okay, we need some space. We need to bring those folks back here. We need to get a start for the new advising model, all that great stuff. Where can we get that space? The likely candidate then became the bookstore, a large space adjacent to the student services area. And so we looked at that bookstore, which led into a conversation about how effective is our bookstore. It functions as essentially a warehouse for most of the semester, except for peak times when students are in there picking up books, which led us to have the conversation about how effective is our contractual arrangement with the current bookstore provider, where our student store is going, and all that great stuff, which led us to move in the direction of a new approach to student stores, bookstores that look more towards serving a fulfillment center type need of used books, electronic books, other educational resources, all of those things. And so, but great, we know we can transition, and long term we'll have a new bookstore in this new building. So where do we put the bookstore on the interim? And we've looked and we've identified some spaces that are right now utilized by other parts of student services and campus living and learning. So we looked into that and said, well, great, here's a good conversation. That space is not necessarily a very productive workspace because we have a pile of students in there. It's great. They love it. It's good space. They hang out there. If you've ever walked by there going to the dining hall, you know they're in there. Not real conducive to what the students want. So we started talking to students, and lo and behold, they've been setting aside money to renovate the student lounge. And we said, well, here's a great opportunity. We got students engaged. They went through designing. They looked at how the student lounge could be updated to create a more student-friendly space, create a help desk, an information desk, provide the types of spaces that the students want. And with all of that, moving campus living and learning, or those functions for students, into a renovated lounge frees up a bookstore space. The bookstore space moves over, frees up space in the student services, which essentially allows us to renovate the student services and essentially put the front door experience and get us started on the direction that we're going with student services. So those three things are happening, and we keep kind of seeing them as an integrated project, and Tim's job has been to try to say, okay, Joe, now I got to figure out how to actually do this, whittle it away. But we're at that point where we want to start the renovations and the movement and to move down this direction. And so I've asked Tim and Carol to come and talk a little bit about sort of what are we specifically talking about in regards to the renovations of the areas, what's the timeline, what does this mean for bookstore relationship, and all that good stuff, just to prepare you better for the conversation on the 19th. So with that, Carol?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and trustees. As Dr. Schaefer has indicated, I'm going to start with the student services area because that's sort of the key to the domino effect that we're going to have happening here over the summer and the fall. As Dr. Schaefer indicated, we're trying to develop a more student-centered, integrated student services area. And the bookstore was the key to begin to make this happen. So much of this is what you see today there. The most developed new space is where the bookstore is, so that's up in this area here. And what we're hoping to do is put a better face on where students come in, let them know where it is that they do come in. And this will give us two opportunities for that. One is the space that they come in now, and then the other, and up in here is where the blue arches are. So if that helps you orient this picture. They can also, we'll have an entry on that side as well. So they can enter into this space through the west side or through the east side. And then this area will be where the students will initially start their journey here with us. This area, and I don't want to speak for Judy and her team, but this area is where we believe that 80% of the students' questions can be answered, and then for the 20% that take a little more conversation, then they'll go wherever they need to go within this area, either to advising, to the student records, admissions, or to financial aid. This is still in the draft stage. They're still working at it. And then I also need to commend the student services group one of the criteria that we asked them to look at as they were designing this space was, okay, this is intended to be a temporary space. How can we transition to our new model of one-stop shopping or integrated student services, but then keep the space usable and flexible enough that when you move out of there, that we have an opportunity to use it for other uses without going into a lot of remodeling space. So you'll see that we have, 4 nice pods of areas that can be used for another purpose when that happens. So with all that in mind, they were working towards what they were trying to achieve, and then also what we'd ask them to do to try to make it a useful space after they leave.
May I
So-
ask a quick question again?
Sure.
Where were the blue arches, Carol?
They're up here at the top, so this is west. So they're right
So
in
the
here.
blue arches are
So
here.
they
they
can
can
come in those 2 sets of doors right there, and then is there or on the east side.
Right,
where they come in now.
is now.
Right,
Right.
so, and this is where the circular drive is, and down a little further is where they would go into the child care center. So this is the circle drive area, this is the
Okay,
entrance that
thank
they
you.
come in now, but they'll be able to go directly to this front door desk here.
Like a little pod or an information area.
Yeah,
Okay.
or they can come in this way. So, we could still direct them to the blue arches, and since that seems to be the most notable place for people to find.
Trustee Erickson, did you have a question?
I have a question about the hallway that is called draft right now. What's going to be in there? I see you have lounge on the far left.
Okay, this is the walkway now through, the same walkway that we have now through the whole area. It says lounge, but some of these are the old terminologies of what's in the space now. And
Now, my question, Carol, has to do with that space, that square footage, that you have draft that's right there right now for the whole thing.
Okay.
But what is gonna be in that long hall? Is
Nothing.
that gonna be
Well, it's-
lots of chairs and comfort areas?
What?
I hear nothing.
What they have now is brick chairs where people can gather, there's some computers, there's a couple of kiosks right out in here that they probably
Can
still
be
stay there.
Nothing, seating area.
And I'm not sure that they have developed exactly what's going in every space, but conceptually, these are the functions that we want to happen in these areas. And the most important piece of this, to make it come together, is what we do in this space right here,
Okay.
and how students find that space.
Correct. So the bookstore, and that becomes the front door experience that represents the admissions, the gateway, if you will. As you come straight down to that, there's actually a new pod right where her cursor is. That's going to be where we'll get the start in the advising model and the advising center. Financial aid has some renovations, but is essentially in the same spot. Records, some renovations. That area in the middle is essentially going to be open walkway. They'll have casual seating in there and areas, and it is large as it is. In some ways to allow people who are hanging out, waiting, and doing those things to not right be over the shoulder of people who are having those confidential conversations, and we're going to try to move those back as far as we can. So you'll see more offices here than we've had in the past. It's to get some of those conversations out of that walkway, that hallway.
And the signage, is that going to be
And Tim's going to
updated?
update you
Oh,
after
good, Tim,
after we
thank
go
you.
through the major projects,
get
and Tim's
there.
going
Thank you.
to update you on the wayfinding as well. Okay, so any other questions on the student services space? Okay.
No
Tim?
questions?
And also the student services space is still in the development stage, so they're not to the construction kind of drawings yet. So student lounge, excuse me.
This is the student lounge. To orient you, the north is to the top of the page. And this is the actual drawing that we're going to build. We want to start building. We want to start working on this the week of the 14th, 15th. We have hired you're going to have to approve a hiring of a contract. We've taken bids for this portion of the project. This portion is about $110,000. The bookstore portion is about $32,000, which Carol will talk about in a minute. But the idea is, this is going to be the work center where SGA was gonna move into. These are 2 offices right here and here for campus living and learning.
Okay.
This is gonna be the student lounge area. This is a computer table, if you will, for plug-ins and for data and power. So kids can, it's a counter height, so kids can bring their laptops in and work on this countertop, or this counter area here. This is gonna be where the ID camera, and this is the greeting area, if you will. They're gonna, the plan is to put some furniture like about this way, and this is where people coming in through the blue arches, through the main entryway, the students can be met there and directed if they need to. There's also where they're supposed to put the ID camera. in
And
this
so
area up
that's
in here.
where your little cursor is, outside is where the blue arches are. For the-
Blue arches
to
are up
the-
here.
Up
yes.
there, okay, thank
Okay.
you.
This is the land, if you notice that we're taking away the steps, we're just doing a ramp down here where the steps and the ramps are now. We're gonna fill in those steps and make a landing
Okay.
right in here. And then down, of course, in the lounge, this is a storage area. We have all those tables and chairs piled in the vestibule. That's not real attractive, so we've got a storage area here. We're reorienting the screen and the seating so that it's to the south wall.
90-degree turn.
Right, right. And then the main traffic is gonna be through this way. Right now, you kind of go through the middle of the lounge, if you remember, and
Right.
that's kind of disrupting if you're having a program or something in there. You got traffic through there, so all the traffic's gonna be on the north edge.
Can you put your cursor on where the little theater is?
Right up there.
Right there,
Mhm.
okay.
The theater's just on the other side of that north wall. And obviously, we're taking the fireplace out and that brick wall that's in there, filling that in, making that all the same level. So there'll be this is a ramp, 88 ramp, and then there's gonna be what is it, about 2 feet, maybe 3 feet, wall right here, and there's gonna be a rail across there.
Okay. Any questions?
Any questions?
For Carol? I'd asked when we looked at the budget last time, and I believe you said starting off 130,000 for this, and that's coming out of that student fees fund, right?
Yes, but it's not the $8 fee. The students, as part of their mandatory fees, there's a percentage of that, or a dollar amount of that that's been going into an account for the maintenance of this area and the students' area, and it's now substantial enough for us to make this renovation. So it's part of their student fees.
Okay.
And I'm gonna correct something later, but I don't wanna get that in the middle of the.
But you're saying 110,000 for this area, and you said 32,000 for the first student services area.
No, sorry. It's 110,000 for the student lounge area.
This one.
Portion here.
Right.
The bid came in at about 110,000.
Right.
The 32,000 I mentioned is for the bookstore renovation, which Carol's gonna explain here in a minute.
Just for this square here?
No.
For the entire
Where the
thing?
bookstore is gonna go, in the campus living and learning, which
Where
we haven't shown you
the
yet.
bookstore is going. Okay, thank you. I got it. Thanks.
Okay, and the bookstore portion is coming out of the commissions that we have earned over time from the bookstore sales. So the students aren't paying for the bookstore renovation, the commissions are.
And those commissions were in the plant fund? Where were those monies?
They're in the auxiliary fund.
Auxiliary fund, okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions on the student lounge area? Okay.
Yes, could I just ask one question as a point of clarification? When we took over the bookstore, this has been a while back, those commissions, there was some discussion about what we were gonna do with those commissions, and somehow it was gonna benefit students directly. Do you remember, Ed? Anything about that?
Scholarships, as I understood.
Scholarships or something
Yeah.
to do with things that would benefit students directly, but what it sounds like to me here is that those commissions actually ended up in the auxiliary fund, and we're now using them for this.
No, not all of them. We are giving $80,000 a year and have been
Okay.
since the beginning of us outsourcing that. And this is the additional additional commissions that we have earned over and above the 80,000. So we have been giving that to scholarships every year.
8,000 for scholarships.
80,000
for scholarships. That's a little better.
Initially, it was for book scholarships, but I think we
Okay.
have moved it into the general scholarship program.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Okay, moving on to the renovated, it's actually the current campus living and learning, and I apologize for this picture. When we blew it up, it sort of lost its detail. But the new transitional bookstore space will be next to the Emporium, and it'll be in what's currently the campus living and learning space. So it's in that central hallway, which we think will help with the use of the bookstore, and then also the synergy with the food service in the Emporium. We believe will really benefit the use of the bookstore. And we also are hoping to change the operational model. So this blown up here, there'll be a retail area in here, some spaces for students to congregate if they choose to do that. And then here is intended to be a counter space, and then students will order their books here. We're going to move students more to the online ordering and being able just to fill those orders so that we don't have so much stock on hand. In the student, we have a little bit of storage space back in here, but then we'll also have some storage space back in the student services area as well. That's current storage space. So this will be smaller in the sense that we'll have to size down the kind of stock that we keep on hand. And then how we're going to serve students. But we believe that it's with its more central location, that it will be used more. Joe had talked about, we service students the first week, when selling the books, and then last week when we're buying them back, and not much in the middle. So we're hoping to create some synergy there, make it a better place for students to want to come to, provide more convenience for them, and some more technology options for getting books.
Trustee Mosier?
Just perceptual, 2 questions. First one, I believe last time there was some discussion that in fact Sodexo would run the bookstore. Potentially they'll get that contract. And just what's the square footage?
Square footage of this new bookstore area here is about 600 square feet. They're vacating the bookstore currently now, including their storage area and student services, about 3,000 square feet. So they're downsizing quite a bit. But as Carol mentioned, they are still retaining a portion of that storage space in student services that they currently occupy, about half of that storage space, which is probably 400 or 500 square feet.
So obviously, we're going to have to be leaner and meaner on the services that we provide. And we are in conversations with Sodexo. We're not there yet, but we'll have some information to you in this next board meeting.
Would there be the potential for continuing scholarship funding then?
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, there still will be commissions paid, and we'll still, we're not changing the use of those commissions, the intent of the commission.
Yeah, just if I may, Carol, we'll know more about the specific the arrangement with Sodexo and what we're looking at, and actually at the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting, that'll be one of the topics on the agenda there, so we can, try to vet it within the committee meeting and get you guys completely up to speed, and then we'll bring it at the 19th as well. But our intent with this conversation is to not compromise anything we already have. It's actually to move to a new store model, become more efficient, more student focused, and still preserve. Never mind, I'm stealing Carol's thunder. She can tell you
No,
that
that's
as well.
great. We are looking at providing greater choices to students and a convenience, and we're hoping to capitalize on the synergy that we think that's happening in the Emporium now, and how students congregate, and so a better environment for students to purchase their books. We're looking at multiple options, more affordable options for students, and and that we're looking at obviously textbook rental, more robust textbook rental program, used books, options online, digital books. We have a ways to go on the digital book thing, but there are those options out there now for students, and we want it to be a destination spot. So it's in a really nice corridor there to be able to have that happen. But obviously, that's going to have to happen in a phased approach to that. And the first phase is what we're talking about right now, the transition from the current space to this new space, downsizing, figuring out how we're going to make it more convenient for students and give them more options and choices. The second one is that we'll begin to design the space, because the intent is that when we get the new building, that the bookstore will then follow the integrated student services model and be in the new building, which will have more space in, and then we can grow what we can do with the bookstore at that point in time. And then the third, I think, our research indicates that the national trend is for digital books. And so we've got a ways to go to develop that concept, but I think we want to look at the digital options for students. And whether that's, they have their own tablet, we provide the tablet, all of that still has to be worked out, but that is where the national trend is going. So that's where we're heading to as well.
Trustee Erickson, you had a question?
Yeah, I have an assumption. I'm wondering whether my assumption's correct. The campus learning center, I assume, is gonna go to the student services area?
It's going to go into this area here.
For the interim, that's gonna go into the lounge area, these two offices in the lounge area.
Okay.
There are two offices in the campus.
Well, it's
living and
close.
learning.
I was close.
Yeah.
But
And-
in the long term, if we get a new building, the campus living and learning is gonna go into the student services area.
The remodeled student services area.
I have a question. Who are we displacing by putting this bookstore next to the,
It's a campus living and learning.
it is the campus living and
Right,
learning?
right, and
Okay.
the student space there. So in order for the dominoes to start to happen, we need to, and the spaces have been all cleaned out. So
Thank
we'll
you.
start with the bookstore space here and get that done.
Okay.
And then, then we can start staging that. Now, the plan now is that the bookstore and the student lounge space will start just as soon as we can get the contract approved by the board. And their substantial date of completion is August 2nd.
Oh,
August 2nd.
exciting.
So, and then we'll start moving we'll be much further along in the planning of the student services space. And we're still talking about how we're going to approach that, whether we're going to do it in pieces and use the bookstore open space as the staging area and move the different groups within that. So like we would do student records, we would move student records in, renovate that space, move them back. And that obviously prolongs the agony in the sense of the dust and the dirt and the noise and all of that. So the best solution to that is to move everybody out and then do it all at once. The problem is that there's not a space for us to move everyone out to. And so we're still working out those kinds of details and the best way we can do that. And I don't have an answer for you other than
I'm
we're
sure you'll
working
make
on
a
it.
good decision.
We got the two options. We just have to figure out which one is the best.
Trustee Mosier.
More of a comment than a question. I would just hope, knowing how significantly it impacts students, you've already talked about digital books and that kind of thing, but the relationship regarding faculty and materials they purchase for their courses, I hope that that relationship, as you shift to Sodexo or whomever that is carefully approached with faculty and the students, because that really creates some enormous problems.
Right, and our intent is to develop a very strong relationship, and we think, given the resources that Sodexo has, that we'll be able to do a much better job of that.
Thank you. Do you have anything else?
Nope, that was our,
And are there any more questions here?
oh, I'm sorry, it isn't, we aren't
I
done.
didn't think I'd heard everything from Tim yet.
Tim's gonna update us on the rest of the projects.
Yes,
that are
Dr.
going on.
Schaefer asked me to give you a little bit of a status on about 4 projects that you've all heard about. One of them is the wayfinding, the signage, which you talked about. We hired a consultant, forget the company's name, Tangrim, out of Denver. And we have our first kickoff meeting on the 13th of June to talk about how we're going to develop this master plan for the wayfinding for both interior and exterior signage. And that's what the consultant's supposed to do, is help us develop our master plan. Then we have to implement it, but right now we're just going through the master plan. But the schedule is, our first meeting is the 13th. Another one that we're working on, as Dr. Schaefer mentioned a little bit, is the gateways, the 2 entryways on the east and west entries. We're working with Sally Means of Bioarchitectural Means, who helped us do the health science building, trying to come up with some concepts. I think we've got a concept identified. The issue right now that we're trying to work through is how to install it, because of the water infrastructure, water line infrastructure on the west entryway. We're having trouble sighting the doggone walls that we want to put up for a gateway. It's more complicated than we thought, so, but we're working through that. We probably won't have it, the goal was to have those gateways done by the time classes start, but I don't think we're gonna make it with the problems we're having, sighting that thing. The welding building addition has started, on the northeast corner of CT, started last week. They've got foundations in already, should be putting up steel probably 2 weeks. So it's moving along. It's obviously a fast track. I think the completion date's the 16th of August. And then the last one I was going to mention was the outdoor stalls, horse stalls. We went out for proposals to have the work done this summer. We contacted about 7 firms and we got 0 proposals. The reason was they couldn't do it in the time frame we wanted, which was May to Labor Day. And so we got no proposals at all. So working with the ag folks, we've figured out a way to offer places to board the horses other than on campus. And so we're gonna extend the completion date until December. And we've gone back out now asking for proposals with that schedule, starting 1 August through December, which isn't ideal, but the students that bring in their horses in are gonna have to board them someplace else. But that's the only way we can get it done. We couldn't get it done in the time frame that we had originally wanted done. We are starting to take the old stalls down. If you drove by them, they're don't have a roof anymore, and they should be out of here maybe even this week. That's the 4 projects.
Trustee Mosier.
Where are we at on the signage that is supposed to be, and I'm talking about that electronic sign? We accepted a bid for the signs that would announce, I think, or was that inherent within the computer system that we already have?
Is that those monitors around campus you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, so you probably saw one coming in tonight out here. So we've got the,
Came in, I missed it.
yes, the digital signage, I believe all the systems are installed. We have some basic content running on them. We're sort of working through the process of training and getting people. In fact, I think we've got some training coming up.
June the 17th.
June 17th in terms of actually putting content in there. So that's moving along quite well.
Okay.
Any
Anything
more
else
questions?
I can answer?
Good job. Thank you.
And just to reiterate, so at the Facilities and Finance Committee will be discussing bookstore and some of the specific projects, and then at your June 19th meeting, we anticipate bringing you 2 action items, one dealing with the formal issuance of the construction bid or the contract, so we can start doing the bookstore and the student lounge, as well as we hope an expansion of the relationship with Sodexo in a contract if we can get that done as well. So conversation at the F&F committee and then to you on the 19th.
And that F&F committee meets June 11th at 9 o'clock in the morning? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And they meet where?
It's going to be in, I believe, TC 123. We're expecting around
121.
121.
121.
Bless you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, CCI 121, because we're expecting a larger crowd than we normally have.
Perfect. Okay, and we're all invited, right?
Yes.
Yes, and it is noticed, so you certainly can all come.
Great, thank you so much. We'll move on to board travel policy. Trustee Mosher, please.
The board travel policy was reviewed back on 9/19/12. The concern I have when I'm putting together the budget for the trustees, it's a bit challenging to try to figure what we need for travel, and given the concerns we have about appropriate use of funding, I think trustees do follow through with that. But it would be nice if we had some way for the chair to know in advance who's planning to travel, and if we as a board maybe, and we can, this is just looking at it now, what your wishes might be. Should we look at X number of trips? Honestly, when you look at going out of state, we have a budget for both in-state and out-of-state. If you look at the out-of-state for ACCT or AACT, I confused those two, but is that right?
AACC.
Yeah, AACC.
American Association of Community Colleges.
Right. If we look at some of those conferences, I think we as a board need to talk about and come up with an idea of what we think we ought to be doing relative to professional development as board members and training that we need. And also, we've often, as Bill's attended and a couple of others, we've attended the legislative meeting. But I'd like to have a little direction as to what we're doing there. And I think it would be good if that was provided to the board chair as to possible interest that folks have, the need they have for development in different areas. When it comes to in-state travel, I think we're pretty good shape to calculate that. There are two members that are going to the WACCT meetings, which is, they call it the board. It's 2 board members from each of the 7 colleges. But those meetings are typically for a year. You may have an extra one. So those are pretty easy for me to look at and somewhat calculate and make a decision on that. Although other sounds contradictory, but it's not meant to be, other non-board members, that is of the WACCT board, but you're a board member, more than welcome to attend those. In fact, we'd love to have a attendance by non-voting members at those when and if it's appropriate and desired by the folks. But usually I can figure the 2 people going to those and make the calculations appropriately. And we have been doing, there's an advocacy group which has been meeting via phone. We do those on phone calls, which is really kind of nice because that keeps the cost down. We're just doing a conference call. And also in terms of the executive board meeting, we've been doing that on phone, again, keeping those costs down so we don't travel on that. So those are the major focus for us for travel. And I would just hope that you might give some consideration, and I may send out to you a couple of items after the F&F meeting next week when we talk a little bit more about it. But how we want to approach that. A travel request is typically sent in by the president's office for us when we plan on going to those different things. But maybe we need to have those travel requests sent a little earlier. That helps us in terms of keeping our costs down. Registration for those conferences, if you go, it's much lower cost if you register early. Obviously, transportation is lower cost when you do that. So if we had travel requests and had the board chair, I'm saying sign just for knowledge purposes, awareness. But those are just suggestions, obviously, from me. Anything that you have or might feel is appropriate for how we approach it, I think. Was that a good point you were making?
I missed that too.
The lady in the box could sort of hear you, but not, you'll have to speak up.
Is Siri in agreement or not?
Siri does not agree.
But, Madam Chair, that's just my suggestion, that people give the board members give some consideration, and if you've got something you think you'd like to see as far as a change on how the policy is set up, we'll talk about it at the F&F and bring that back at the next meeting.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I feel like we have to have better planning as a board of trustees to really take advantage of what kind of travel is available to us, so that when we go traveling, we're not just traveling, we're traveling with a purpose. And I really like that you said that we have a written report when someone comes back from a conference, and they also have an oral report, which Bill did. And
Both.
so.
Yeah, and
you
it's
did
in the
both.
policy now.
I said both. You did a good job, Bill.
Yeah.
But we want to make them valuable to us as trustees. We don't want to just say, well, I want to go to wherever and, take a trip. That's not the goal of our travel money. It's to learn something valuable, but maybe that's something that we can talk about at a retreat, if we want to put that on the agenda and talk about the meetings for the upcoming year. And I know that would be 2 different financial years because of the way we plan our budget. But maybe we could have a retreat before, like now is maybe what you're suggesting, have a retreat or have a conversation early and plan out our next fiscal year of travel.
Yes, Madam Chair, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And we all know that those conferences are not announced always that early, so it is a difficult challenge, but I think we could put some of that together. And I would lay one other thing out to you that has recently been broached, and that is there is an education committee, which Carol, you, I believe, are still on, for WACCT. They're looking to try to focus on some additional things and get a little more active. Again, the work that's been done there, as we had a year ago or maybe a year and a half ago, we had an educational meeting where we attended downstairs in EEC 123, I think. We had a afternoon spent with ACCT folks making a presentation on trustee activities. So,
We need to continue that. Yes.
I totally agree with everything that you all have been saying relative to looking at how we're going to utilize our professional development funds, and also as a board, how we are going to be representing this college at various organizations. I think Ed is asking for something also to, what should he put in for this year? And my suggestion would be that it appears that we're staying within budget with the current out-of-state. I think we have $14,000 there, and there's $6,700 left as of whenever this last one that you sent me, Carol. What was the date on this one?
March, I think, isn't it?
Maybe it was, yeah,
Or
March.
April.
And then there's $3,500 for the trustees for in-state travel. And for your budget, for the next trustee budget for travel, in-state and out-of-state for the next fiscal year, maybe those figures would work.
Yes, and unless people are looking at more travel or something, but I'd like to keep it at that level or reduce it a little bit. And was not to be a part of this policy, but I'd simply throw out too, you might keep in mind and give me any heads up on there was 5,000, still is 5,000, although I think we're looking to do something with some of the innovative funds there, whether we want to continue that and how we might set that up. And I think, Dr. Schaefer, you were maybe at F&F going to share a little bit of direction on some of that, perhaps, for us.
I would love to do it.
Sure.
Yes, it is on my list to figure out and develop a process for those things to be requested, and so, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. That was a good thing to bring up.
Madam Chair, I don't have an iPad that says, sorry, I missed that. so I can't, I have to say it myself. But I want to iterate what happens June 11th. I have June 10th and June 13th for meetings. I don't know what's happening June 11th.
The Finance and Facilities meeting at 9 o'clock.
Here?
Yes, in CCI 121, and we are all invited.
That's over in the, no, that's down here,
Right.
across from the UP.
Do, maybe, Vicki, we could get a reminder, please? Thank you.
Okay, I just, 9 to 11.
Sounds good.
Bill, that's a committee meeting.
And I'm not on that committee.
Kevin and Ed are your trustee
But
representatives.
she says we should all be there.
No, I did not. I said
I
I would like to be there because I think this is a very important meeting, and but you, if, it's okay. I just feel like I want to be there this time, so.
Madam Chair, there are a series of meetings next week.
Yes, sir.
A series.
And you have the strategic planning
Well,
committee.
that's what I have.
Okay, on
Okay.
Monday.
And
That one you have to be at, Bill,
And
yes.
Thursday.
And Thursday, yes.
Now, the question is, it was rather to be the second part of that strategic planning was either gonna be on Wednesday or Thursday.
Thursday.
Well, wait a minute, I haven't heard that it's gonna be on a specific date.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be on a specific date?
The second phase of strategic planning will not be next week. It would be the following week or the week after that is the way it's shaping up as well. So for strategic planning, and again, Bill and Ed are your representatives on the strategic planning team. On Monday the 10th will be the first day, and that's where we'll have our community partners coming in and presenting as part of the environmental scanning process. Then we're going to meet on the morning of the 13th. And we are trying to schedule for the second phase of that, in which we go through mission, vision, and values, which will be in a subsequent week. My hope is before the end of June, but we'll see how the participation can shape up.
And will that be here again?
Yes.
Those meetings be right
Yes.
here? Yeah.
Yes.
I think Vicki can remind us so we don't get too confused. Thank you, Vicki. Okay, moving on to future studies session topics, Dr. Shaker.
And Madam Chair, just after the conversation that you had and we had leading up to this, I thought it might be useful to put this on for open discussion. There are a series of topics that came up in the feedback that we received from the board. We certainly don't have to do it tonight in light of time, but one of the things that would help me prepare for these would be to get an idea of what are the pressing topics, and then we can start scheduling them so we can prepare. I think that the conversation went quite well tonight, but a lot of folks really dropped things to get that together. And so it's just something I'd like to do is have a conversation. What are the things that you want to study, and let's get them on the schedule, and so we can plan and prepare for those. And that can happen tonight. It can happen on the 19th. I just wanted you to start thinking about that and having that conversation, and then providing me the feedback.
I think that's excellent, and actually, if each of the trustees would like to email me, I could, or Joe, and we could suggest our topics. I think we're going to have quite a busy meeting at the business meeting on the 19th. And so either way, you can email me, CC Joe, or vice versa, and Vicki, or all of us, however you want to do it, so that we can get topics of interest on our agenda.
And that's, Madam Chair, that's not for the 19th, though. That's for the study sessions down the road.
In July, perhaps. But I think Joe was left scrambling but I was very pleased with the way things turned out tonight about the topic of education, especially the math and the remedial math and English and reading. So I think we accomplished a lot. I learned a lot tonight, and I want to thank you for getting that all together.
You're welcome, and it's not me that I consider, it's the some of the faculty that are off contract, and then just getting those folks ahead of the time so we can put together meaningful information for your conversation.
Thank you so much. And that leads us into a couple of just bullet points. One is the picnic is on Friday at 11:30 at Holiday Park. Is that correct? And I do believe we're invited, and it's very much fun. We get to meet everybody and their children and spouses. And the second item is Marty Sizik asked, and I'm sure that you've all read your emails, and perhaps some of you have even taken the survey of the evaluation of our president, but she wants those in by June 13th at midnight. And we would like to meet early on the 19th at 5:30 here, have our dinner in the hallway like we've done in the past, eat between 5:30 and 6, and then we will call Marty on the phone and have an executive session to go over Joe's evaluation. And then we'll have a regular business meeting at 7 o'clock.
Madam Chair, so we would have a regular business meeting at 6, which we would adjourn to an executive session and then come back, or not adjourn, but
I guess we would have to call a regular business meeting,
Yeah.
adjourn, you are very correct, to an executive session.
Right.
And we would get Marty Sizik on the phone, and that would give us an hour if we need it. She thinks we'll only need about a half hour. But we want to allow enough time to get our answers and ask our questions. And then we'll have a regular business meeting at 7 o'clock. So would that work for people's schedules?
Actually, the business meeting will start at 6, as saying, and then we will adjourn it to an
Yeah.
executive session,
No, exactly.
and then return to.
That's what it said.
Exactly. That's what we said.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Okay, I took the survey today and filled it out, and in the end, it says log out.
Mhm.
Now, when you push log out, does it go to her?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
I
I'm
didn't
so
start it all
proud of
over
you.
again.
You had to start over?
so you
Well,
filled out 2 of them?
I didn't send it. No, it really says start. I pushed, log in or whatever, finish, whatever it was.
Log out.
Log out, I hit that and
Then it says start.
then it said start.
That's right. It did.
Yeah.
I didn't
So
get
I was a
that.
little confused, I assumed that I did.
Just assume